Our story kicks off with Belle, a boy with an intense devotion to his sister, vowing to do anything to keep her safe. But yeah, it's that classic tale. He's the family loser, gets exiled, trains with some monk, and returns totally overpowered. But when he finally gets home, the city is already a sea of flames. He finds his sister, but she's already been reincarnated. In a blind rage, he's ambushed from behind and killed, only to awaken on the very day he was meant to get his divine weapon. But wait, I haven't even explained what a divine weapon is. These are special tools only the privileged few can wield. They are literally called divine weapons. These things are the physical manifestation of a person's soul. Because of this, each weapon is blessed with incredible, unique powers. A certain noble family once even defeated the evil god. The great catastrophe douche. From birth, its members are born with it all. Bodies built for war, incredible talent, and divine weapons that are absolutely broken. Our main character was born into this very family, hoping to one day be a great hero, proudly wielding his own divine weapon. At least, that was the plan. But during the oracle ceremony, where these weapons appear, he discovered a shocking truth. He had nothing. Zero. It was a first in his family's entire history, making him their first epic. Failure. For this, he was branded inferior and constantly humiliated, called a total embarrassment. The second son, Zane, was a natural-born jerk. For him, useless people like our hero, who had no divine weapon, simply didn't belong. He used this excuse to give our protagonist some unsolicited facial massages. You know, temporary plastic surgery with his fists. Jessica and Sarah just watched this all happen. Jessica, for her part, seemed to be enjoying the beatdown sessions. Sarah, however, clearly hated what was happening. She tried to step in, but Jessica tripped her flat on her face. She claimed this was so the girl could observe what happens to the weak and futureless, seeing Jessica stomp on his friend's head. Our protagonist got worried, but he was still getting that involuntary massage himself. His bully sneered that filthy hybrids always stick together. They were children of concubines, which is why they were relentlessly bullied and called mutts. After the beating, he apologized for being too weak to protect Sarah, but with a huge smile. The girl told him not to worry, promising she'd always be there for him. But the boy refused to accept his situation. He swore he would get stronger, even without a divine weapon. He also promised to protect the girl with his very life. After they hugged, she thanked him for making that vow, a promise he couldn't keep, as just days later, he was banished from the family. He was immediately flooded with regret and rage, knowing she would be targeted. He had to become strong enough to get her out of that hell. Mastering a normal weapon is pointless against a knight with a divine one, so he had no choice but to become even stronger. In fact, it was his only option. He appeared at the shop counter with a heavy bag of money. Slamming down the gold coins, he said he'd take one of every weapon, a very strange request. The shopkeeper figured the kid was starting his own personal war. 2 years passed since his exile from the family. He traveled far and wide on horseback. The boy had learned a lot, but he still lacked a divine weapon. Before him stood a horde of monsters. He had a whole arsenal ready to take them down. He was itching for a fight, having mastered every single weapon, becoming a one-man army. He even had a gun, perfect for collecting debts from scumbags. The monsters didn't stand a chance against him. After the battle, a hooded man who had been watching decided to finally speak up. He asked if the boy always carried that many weapons, wondering if this was the obsession of someone who couldn't get a divine weapon. He mentioned he'd set a trap, hoping to find someone he could trust, someone with the potential to become a true hero. The whole speech sounded like the ramblings of a lunatic, until an intense blue glow formed in the man's hand, firing a bolt right at the boy. A shining object was now lodged in the ground before him. It looked like a weapon, leaving our protagonist totally stunned by what was happening. The man said he would place his trust in the boy, leaving the weapon behind. Still stuck in the earth, the object pulsed with a powerful energy. He thought it might be a sword and cautiously approached it, finally reaching out to touch it in his palm. But this was just a scabbard. The divine sheath of Avalon, a legendary artifact meant to house and transfer sacred weapons, passed down through generations. It contained the might of history's 5 greatest heroes. And the boy's only goal was to master this incredible power. 3 long years flew by. Now he stands beside his master as a dragon darkens the sky. The beast descended, full of fury, preparing its inferno, ready to scorch all life from the earth. But this searing heat didn't faze the main character. He was unimpressed. Calling forth Avalon, the white scabbard appeared. He grasped it, mimicking the draw of a blade, focusing his will. He summoned a legendary power until the shield of Achilles materialized in his grasp. Its divine energy formed a barrier, deflecting the dragon's onslaught. For the counter, he called forth Mjolnir, the storm hammer. He leaped onto the beast, hammer raised to deliver a devastating blow. The impact was immense, smashing the creature's skull into the ground. A single strike was all it took. His master declared his training complete. He could finally see his sister, for not even an Srank paladin could stand in his way. At those words, hope ignited it in our hero's eyes. Overcome with joy, he vowed to set out immediately. 5 years had passed since his exile. Now, he had the strength to save his sister. He rushed onward, praying that Sarah was safe. He was coming to free her from that wretched place. But as he arrived, he found the entire region engulfed in flames. He couldn't understand what had happened, and worry seized his heart. Through the blaze, he spotted unfamiliar banners. He recognized them instantly. They belonged to another duchy, Rothwindsor, a civil war. He stormed the castle, searching for his sister. Desperate, he reached a grand door, already ajar. But inside the hall, he was met with a horrifying scene. A broken body lay on the floor, grievously wounded. It couldn't be. This couldn't have happened. It was the body of his beloved sister. He gathered her in his arms, his heart sinking. She was lifeless. It seemed the worst had already come to pass. He remembered his last words to her, and the promise he had failed to keep, utterly broken. A desperate scream tore through the silence. After mastering his power, he had failed the one person who mattered most. Suddenly, a bolt of energy shot towards him, piercing, straight through his chest. His body was impaled. Another presence was in the room. That sinister mana. It had to belong to an S-rank warrior. The man recognized him. Belle, he sneered. The Exile. But the boy didn't understand how he was recognized. It didn't matter. He would soon join his sister in the afterlife. This was the man who took his sister's life. The killer raised his blade, Ashishin, ready to finish our hero, who was drowning in grief, weakened and broken. He could do nothing. After that tragic end, he found himself before the priest again, staring at his hands. He couldn't understand how he'd returned to this place. He knew that stained glass. It was in his family's cathedral. The ceremony was in progress, but he was certain he had died. If this was the ceremony, it meant he had gone back in time. The priest told him to clasp his hands and picture his divine weapon. But the boy knew what happened the first time around. At this point, he hadn't yet received Avalon, and he was hoping to be exiled, to start his journey all over. But something different happened. Something that shocked him. There was no doubt about it. Before his very eyes was Avalon. He would do it all again. And this time, with the power he now possessed, he could rewrite his destiny. This was where his real life would begin. But this was so unusual that even the priest was speechless, though he clearly had something to say. But Belle knew what the priest would say, that fighting with a mere sheath was impossible. Taken aback, the priest said that wasn't what he was thinking at all. Still, the boy, brimming with confidence, told him not to worry. This was the greatest divine weapon in existence. Now, in the castle halls, he rushed to find his sister. If he was truly in the past, she had to be alive. The memories of his past life were still painfully fresh, and he worried for Sarah. At last, he reached her door. Sarah welcomed him with a brilliant smile. Indeed, she was alive and well, radiating the same beauty he cherished. Surprised to see her brother, the girl rushed to give him a hug, eager to hear about his ceremony. But the boy didn't answer. He was so relieved that she was still alive. The abrupt hug made Sarah wonder if something had happened to him. He still carries the crushing regret from his past life. The memory of that pain remains vivid for him. He would never allow his sister to suffer like that again. It wasn't long before she started to complain. The hug was a bit too tight. Even so, she was happy to get it. It was only then that she noticed his face. Tears were streaming down his cheeks, and she had no idea why. Gently patting his head, she comforted him, promising everything would be okay since they had each other. Her words warmed his heart, a heart that apparently grew up somewhere dramatic. Just then, the jerk brother arrived. He entered the room, seeing the two mutts sharing a tender moment. He'd been looking for Belle for a while. This is Zane, a first-class sadist. The jerk announced that he had already heard the news. His brother got a peculiar item. During the ceremony, it seems the priest is a world-class gossip. Belle confirmed the rumor. He received a sheath. His brother's disdain was obvious. Laughing madly, He declared that a sheath is not a weapon, and perfect for a poor soul like him. He could never fight. And the two of them were a pair of absolute fools. Our hero had to clench his fist, fighting the urge to perform some dental work without anesthesia on this punk. So he gave him one chance to take it all back, but the idiot just didn't get it. He was so used to his half-brother never reacting. So our hero warned him one last time. Take it back. Feeling challenged? The jerk's face twisted with even more hatred. Now he would teach a lesson to the concubine's son. But too bad for him. Our protagonist has years of intense training, landing a sharp blow to his stomach to help him reflect on his life choices. The poor guy didn't throw up his lunch, only because it was already mostly digested. He just collapsed, folding in on himself. Perhaps the liver shot made his blood pressure drop. Looking down at the punk, he warned him never to threaten Sarah again, or he might get a lesson in manners. The jerk just called him a bastard, ready to escalate things with his own divine weapon. He promised to scorch his brother's skin and make him beg. Seeing that the jerk wanted a serious fight, he smiled. He told Sarah to step back because things were about to get very entertaining, reassuring her it would all be fine. Preparing for the fight, he summoned the mighty Avalon to his hand. His brother couldn't believe it. Defeated by an object that isn't even a weapon. He was a level E paladin. A mere bastard stood no chance against him. This is actually quite relevant. Paladins are ranked by levels, depending on their strength. After receiving a divine armament, they start at level F. Channeling mana into it brings them to level E. From level D onward, mana can fuel special attacks. To surpass level B, one must know how to unlock the weapon's unique skills. It's hilarious the jerk is bragging about level E. He still has a long way to go. This confidence only made the jerk more furious. Being even more provocative. He called his brother cute. That was the absolute last straw. He was going to attack the mutt with devastating force. Sarah grew worried, seeing how serious this was, bringing his hands to the sheath. He called forth a sword of pure light. Caliburn appeared before them. A truly stunning sword. The fool was in shock as his weapon's flames were useless against it. Not to mention, he had no idea what kind of sword had just appeared. The counterattack was enough to shatter the fool's balance. Even worse, his divine weapon was sliced in half by that sword. The boy watched, terrified, finally realizing he had been utterly defeated. Still unable to process what had just happened, he was sure that there was nothing inside that sheath. Approaching him, our hero asked if he was satisfied, or if he wanted to beg for his forgiveness, like a true sore loser. He claimed he'd been tricked, that he never knew the boy was armed. If he had, he wouldn't have attacked, being the coward he is. He still managed to threaten him, saying he'd never forget this, before fleeing the room in terror. His pride completely shattered, but our hero followed him. They weren't finished yet. In his hand now appeared a fire. Breathing gun, the Ragnarok. With the fool in his sights, he fired a single shot. The poor soul tries to escape. That shot grazed his face, slamming into the wall. Staring at the bullet hole, sheer terror gripped him. Nothing was making any sense anymore. How could he have another weapon? He just used a sword. It's impossible for him to have multiple divine arms. Our hero warned him to remember this lesson. Don't ever provoke Sila again. From now on, his choices were his own. Besides, the idiot had no more underwear left. To destroy... The fool's fear intensified. With a chilling glare, our hero warned that the next misstep would earn him a hole in the head. Terrified, the coward fled for his life. Our main character then stored his divine weapon. Sarah, who witnessed everything, was completely amazed. She was okay, asking if those were his divine arms. He simply reminded her of his promise. He had told her to leave it all to him. She thought he was incredibly cool, and for him, protecting that precious smile is everything. He swore he would never lose again. Elsewhere, the fool ran to tattle. He went straight to his father, the Duke, crying that he was humiliated like a dog. The Duke's interest was piqued. Belle had multiple divine weapons. The fool warned, this wasn't normal, claiming Belle must have made a pact with some demon for that power. He demanded Belle's immediate banishment. But the Duke barely heard him, lost in thought. He was captivated by the idea of a powerful heir, rising from his throne. He ignored the boy. When asked where he was going, the answer was simple to see Belle. He had to confirm this power himself, with his own eyes. After the fight, our hero needed rest. He won, but he was still in the body of a child, utterly exhausted. His mana control was still clumsy. That attack should have been a blast of fire, not a simple bullet. He was definitely F rank. He desperately needed to improve his strength. This level was unacceptable. He then recalled a past battle he'd witnessed, They were the Roth Windsors, a family with a long-standing rivalry. Any small thing could have been the spark for that conflict. His past attacker was surely from that house. But this time, things would be different. He'd protect his sister, and to do that, he needed respect in his own family. His bedroom doors burst open. He had no idea why his father was standing there. Galleon, a man of great feats, from the Great War 20 years ago. He faced an evil god alone. He carved his own path, through the dark continent with his blade. He was known to all as the Sword Saint. And by his father's side stood the little coward. Now he knew why his father had come. He was surely being accused of something. But this was the perfect chance. The fastest path to recognition is to be seen by the family head. Bowing deeply, he showed the Duke respect. The old man noted he'd changed a lot since they last met, but he said he came as a father, telling him to relax and be informal. With pure maturity, he replied, I cannot. A single word can be misread, and I must be responsible. Before the Duke, the old man was impressed by the boy's wisdom. He then told the boy to rise, so he did. The Duke agreed to the boy's terms. Instantly, his entire presence shifted, becoming overwhelming. The Duke's aura was terrifying. He heard his sons had fought, and sibling conflict is forbidden. Belle feigned some regret. The older brother smirked. Expecting a punishment? No one. In that house can defy the Duke's might. But our hero stood firm. He declared that he and his younger sister were being bullied. Hearing this, the Duke asked if his orders were broken. Over a childish squabble, the boy confirmed it, and the Duke pressed, asking if he truly felt no regret. Belle declared that abandoning loved ones is a paladin's greatest disgrace. He would always fight, to protect his sister, even against his own brother. This was the knight's path he had chosen to walk. The Duke aimed his sword, asking what he would do if he were the opponent. But the boy did not flinch. He wouldn't hesitate, even against the Duke. The old man tried to break him with a glare, but admired his son's spirit. He announced he would overlook the incident, much to the older brother's dismay. Looking at him, he was disappointed that Zane had harassed his own sister, and got his butt handed to him. The little punk clearly didn't see that coming. The Duke says he should be ashamed and never show his face again. Still, he understood Belle's choice and respected his courage for speaking up, knowing the risks. Belle apologized for his rashness, but his father declared that this is the very spirit of a knight of catastrophe. Now, he demanded a display of power, ordering the boy to reveal his divine weapon. Belle complied with the command. A blue glow emanated from his hands as the Duke's eyes widened in awe. That sheath was Avalon, a legendary divine weapon. But to the Duke, this made no sense at all. He knew the legends of the weapon that holds the first paladin's spirit, one which is wielded only by the greatest heroes. He questioned if the rumors of a sword and a firearm were true, and Belle confirmed it. He explained that these weapons reside within Avalon. As proof, he showed both to his father. The Duke's mind raced, wondering if this was truly possible. To his absolute shock, the boy then revealed that he can only wield 2 at a time, but 3 more weapons are still sealed inside. There was no doubt. This son was destined to become the next hero. He stated his disdain for the weak, but from this day forward, he had high hopes for Belle's future. As he left, he commanded him to train relentlessly. The heavy door shut, and the boy finally exhaled, the pressure nearly overwhelming him. He had to get stronger, but this kid's body was a major handicap. Reaching D rank was the goal, and that meant hunting monsters to absorb their mana. His first stop was the nearest forest to hunt some orcs. Night fell, and a creature's head now lay silently on the ground. Deep in the woods, the slaughter continued. These monsters stood no chance at all, for something far deadlier was hunting them. The beast's fangs were like sharpened steel. It let out a furious roar, asserting its absolute dominance. This forest, it brought back memories after being exiled in his past life. He had trained in this very place. But something felt wrong. He'd been walking for some time and found not a single monster. From the bushes, unseen eyes watched his every move. He finally spotted orcs, but they were in several pieces. Their remains were scattered like grim decorations. The scene was as horrifying as it was strange, and as he tried to process it, a terrifying roar shattered the silence. The boy whipped around to find the source, and attack was already upon him, forcing a desperate block. The sheer force sent him flying backward. This was not the prey he was looking for. That thing was a Fenrir. So that's why the forest was empty of monsters. It was a D-rank beast's territory. His mana was nearly gone, leaving him at E rank at best. He knew he should run for his life, but one look in its eyes told him he'd be killed before he even took a step. The boy had to stay sharp to avoid becoming Wolf Chow. Caught by surprise, he finally saw the monster's impossible speed. He barely threw himself out of the attack's path. In his hands, he summoned his flame-spitting pistol. He fired multiple shots, but the creature dodged every single one. Now he was truly in a bind. With his mana so low, his spells were just too slow. The firearm was completely useless. He had to switch tactics. With his sword drawn, he charged his opponent. Its paw, lined with razor-sharp claws, was a lethal threat. Yet, the boy nimbly dodged the devastating swipe. In that instant, he found an opening. He struck at the creature, but it dodged with equal speed. This strategy wasn't working. He was risking everything. In this fight, at the peak of his power, this oversized mutt would have been vaporized. The wolf lunged again, its fury growing. Belle knew he couldn't match its speed, forcing him to stand his ground and defend. The attack connected, and he took a painful blow. He was now cornered, unable to escape the center of the relentless assault. Bit by bit, the creature wore him down, now advancing toward him, ready for its afternoon meal. Having just been reincarnated, he refused to let his new life end so pathetically. He had to summon the shield of Achilles. It was his only chance to defend and counter. But the beast's agility was monstrous, and it blindsided him from the side. As the boy hit the ground, the shield slipped from his grasp. The fight couldn't go on like this, or he was about to become dinner for this aggressive canine. His current weapons were useless, and the Warhammer's attacks were far too slow to ever hit their mark. He only had one weapon left in his arsenal. With no other choice, he had to use it. Immediately, the creature lunged, going for the kill. The boy closed his eyes, focusing his will. An instant before impact, he called for Aegis, but the beast's attack was already upon him, and then nothing. A gauntlet of dark energy materialized in his hand. A last resort. But better than dying a chamse simshis. Second time, the beast lunged forward, but the fight was already over. He'd become much faster. With his hammer ready, he was already above the beast. There was no way it could keep up now, and the hammer descended, aimed to shatter bone. A single, crushing blow landed, sending the beast writhing in agony, its teeth completely rearranged. Aegis, the gauntlet of darkness, amplified his physical power. But that wasn't its only effect. A voice began whispering orders in his mind, demanding destruction. The wolf was still alive, and furious. He felt his own power surging, a desire to take lives. He taunted the beast, easily dodging every single attack. Suddenly, it was the wolf that was on the defensive, much to our hero's amusement. And finally, the wolf's time in the land of the living was over. It was a relief he could end it so quickly. That weapon couldn't be unequipped. Mid-combat, its dark influence growing stronger over time, pulling him into darkness. Now he wondered, why was a Fenrir doing in this forest? As he pondered, he noticed his hammer had changed. It seemed to be crackling with newfound energy. By slaying the beast, he could now absorb its attributes. Defeating strong foes was far better than weak mobs. He couldn't wait to test his new power. Meanwhile, in the castle garden, his sister rested peacefully in the shade. Her flower crown was finally finished. She really hoped her brother would like it. When someone snatched it from her hands, this girl sneered that the flower crown was hideous. But then again, it was perfect for a filthy commoner like her. This little demon's name was Jessica. She turned to ask Spencer for his opinion. The strange-looking boy quickly agreed. He was nothing but her lapdog. She tossed the flower crown into the air, and it was instantly obliterated. Spencer had used his whip. Sarah could do nothing. She was utterly defenseless. Jessica sighed, bored already. With a weapon in hand, she told Sarah to come along. It was time for some target practice. She fired a warning shot at the Chintid. Terrified girl. But Belle appeared in a flash. He blocked the shot with his sheath, announcing he would play. With Jessica instead, Sarah gasped, having not seen him arrive. Honestly, she's completely oblivious to her surroundings, always missing people approaching. Belle smirked, needing an excuse to test his new divine weapon. Jessica was just confused. No mutt was going to stand in her way. But Belle was too, busy comforting his sister, assuring her it would be okay. Because now, he had some business to settle. With this bratty girl, the boy with the awful haircut tried to act tough. Belle knew that. This guy was just Jessica's servant, so he revealed himself as the Duke's son. But the boy scoffed, refusing to respect a concubine's son. That just irritated our hero. Jessica demanded to know why he was so confident, calling him weak and lucky for beating Zane. Everyone thought our hero just got lucky, and that Zane was just careless. Using only a sheath, he had to be the weakest of the weak, closing his eyes. He declared she could see for herself if it was luck or talent. Jessica, who definitely did not expect this, grew anxious. She ordered Spencer to dispose of this trash immediately, a task he would handle with pleasure. Ice formed wherever his whip landed. Still, Belle was not impressed. Spencer was a D rank, paladin with an ice whip as his divine weapon, leagues above some E rank loser, but our main character is the main character. The fool boasted he'd freeze his legs so he couldn't escape, and then his arms and body until he was paralyzed, finishing by slapping his face until he was unrecognizable. Belle sighed that he talked too much. It was time to remind this extra he's just an extra. Spencer warned him not to underestimate him, vowing to turn him into a popsicle. The whip shot towards Belle, but our hero dodged it with ease. Jessica couldn't believe her eyes. For a D-rank paladin, he wasn't bad, but he was still a nobody, and our hero had trained relentlessly in his past life. This was nothing more than a child's play to him. Sarah was stunned. Her brother looked like he was dancing. Meanwhile, Spencer became deeply frustrated, yelling that his target only knew how to run. Belle decided to show him he wasn't running. From now on, he wouldn't dodge anymore. Everyone there was shocked by his overwhelming confidence. Belle wanted to. Let's see if that mouth of his has any bite. Goaded. Spencer foolishly charged forward. Time to turn him into an ice statue. The whip struck at Belle, who stood defiantly, arms wide open. It lashed out again, with no effect. Sarah watched in terror as the ice finally took hold. His limbs were completely frozen, unable to move. Spencer aimed for his face. Belle just scoffed, asking if that was all, because if so, it was his turn to play. In an instant, he summoned Ragnarok, and the weapon appeared. The divine firearm materialized in his hand. Spencer's jaw dropped. 2 divine weapons. Impossible. From the ice, Belle's mana began to surge. In a flash, he was completely free. Jessica couldn't believe her eyes. How could Belle do that? 2 divine armaments, and he could use his attributes with such skill. He was simply on another level. Now, it was time for judgment. Firing a torrent of scorching flames. Spencer knew he was in trouble. He hastily formed a shield with his ice whip, hoping it would be enough to block the inferno. A futile hope. Belle knew his bullet would pierce it without any trouble. The projectile tore through the ice barrier. Spencer couldn't believe this overwhelming power. It slammed into his chest with immense force. Though not piercing, the impact was devastating. He collapsed. Jessica watched in pure terror. That mutt just flattened a D-rank paladin. As a mere E-rank, she stood no chance. She knew she was next. The protagonist's cold gaze met hers. It's over. Panicked, she summoned her weapon. Her divine weapon appeared. Don't come any closer. But fear made her hands tremble violently. She fired wildly, missing every shot. Please, stay back, she pleaded. But her own feet betrayed her. Her legs gave out from under her. She collapsed, overcome by terror before the man who held her life in his hands. He gave a simple warning, leave Sarah alone. The girl was utterly frozen with fear. Paralyzed, she couldn't even speak. Her only option was to run for her life. Sarah then rushed to her brother. She was overcome with gratitude. Did that whip hurt you? He just laughed. Spencer's too weak. It was pathetic. Sarah praised his incredible strength. He replied, I'm just strong enough to protect you, and showed her the new flower crown he had crafted since the first was ruined. Sarah gently placed it on his head, thanking him. Belle treasured this gift from his sister. One day, he vowed this whole nation would praise her kind soul. But that was the problem. Here, everyone despised the children of concubines. Proving his own worth would be an uphill battle. He had to earn their respect. And for that, one task needed to be done. Immediately, outside, the Duke was meditating with his sword, his focus absolute and impressive. After a moment, he swung his blade, slicing through the air and cutting the falling leaves mid-flight. Only then did he sense Belle's approach. What is it you want? The Duke asked. Belle walked forward, to ask for the Duke's permission. Intrigued, the Duke waited. But first, Belle respectfully knelt before him. The Duke was surprised by the formal gesture. Belle stated his goal, I wish to take the C-rank admission exam. This caught the Duke's interest. Belle explained he wished to serve the king as a knight of their noble house. To maintain the duchy's honor, the family has obligations to fulfill for the royal family, like providing escorts and hunting monsters. This is the fastest path for him to gain status in his own family. By taking on difficult missions, he can build his achievements. But he must pass the exam to get those missions. The Duke saw the boy's burning ambition. However, he was firm. It is far too soon for you. A full paladin must be at least C rank, and right now, Belle was only a fledgling F rank paladin. Having just received his divine weapon, focus on the E rank exam first, the Duke advised. But he didn't expect what Belle revealed next. The boy presented a monstrous fang. Is this enough proof? The Duke's eyes widened. That was a fang from the great beast Fenrir. How did you obtain this? He demanded. Belle simply summoned Ragnarok. It was a bit of a struggle, Belle explained. But I managed to tame the stubborn mutt. Seeing the aura around the hammer, the Duke understood. The boy could already use his attributes, and he had defeated a D-rank monster. This child was truly strong. Strong enough for the C-rank exam. The Duke gave his permission, but with one stern condition. Do not even think of disappointing this family. Filled with resolve, Belle gave his solemn promise. Him, but that wasn't his way. At the testing site, he saw many other candidates. This was because level C was an insurmountable wall for most people. The young boy quickly drew the attention of the other applicants. Many were grown adults, while he was still a child. He walked up to the exam reception desk. The attendant asked who he was and where his father was, but she was stunned to learn. He was there for the exam himself. She gently suggested he return when he was older. The boy asked not to be treated like a kid, as he was also a paladin. As they spoke, someone approached Belle, telling him to stop playing dress-up. A place like this was no playground for little kids. He needed to leave now. Protagonist had no clue what this guy's problem was, but it was clearly going to be trouble. The others, however, knew this man's identity. His name was Lennox, the strongest level D paladin around. It is, said his divine weapon. The wind sword unleashes 8 cuts with every swing, a truly awesome power, and he already had a massive following. Lennox warned that if the kid planned to test, he better be as good as... He was doubting the boy even owned a divine weapon, holding the sheath at his waist. Belle stated it was right here. Seeing it was just a scabbard. The man burst out laughing, thinking it was impossible to fight with such junk. Others in the crowd began to snicker, mocking the idea of trash as a divine weapon. Glad they weren't so pathetic. Lennox sneered that he didn't care if some ignorant child wanted to throw his life away. But it bothered him that the boy's presence put them on the same level, as if they were equals. As he left, he warned the little trash to run back to his mommy. With that burst of annoyance over, the boy told the receptionist to just register him. She asked if he was absolutely sure, but his will was firm. For this, a letter from a B-rank knight or higher is required, on top of being level D. With that recommendation, he should be allowed to take part. This would settle all the arguments. The woman knew it was unlikely any knight would recommend a child. But upon reading the letter, she saw it was from Duke Catastrophe himself. Only then did she realize the child before her was the Duke's own son. The participants gathered in the arena where the exam would be held. The instructor began explaining the rules of the test. First, they would be sent to a dungeon using the teleportation stone. They'd have 5 hours to return with a jewel of light. In total, there were 3 jewels hidden inside the dungeon. Only those who found a jewel would be promoted. The arrogant fool was certain. He was destined to be one of the winners. The other competitors looked nervous while our protagonist just felt secondhand embarrassment for the guy. After the briefing, the instructor asked if they were all ready. Hearing their enthusiastic shouts, the exam began right away. It was the main character's turn to step into the dungeon, through the teleportation stone. The runes began to glow fiercely as he was whisked away to a completely new location. It felt like passing through a magical gate. He had finally arrived inside the cave. It seems they were all sent to different spots on the first floor. Now he had to decide which path to take. Although the dungeon was massive, he had more than enough time to finish. And since he had this chance, it would be a waste not to use it to its fullest potential. This dungeon was crawling with creatures, and the more he defeated, the more his mana would grow. He immediately drew his sword, planning to hunt every monster in this place. Inside the dungeon, the other candidates struggled against the monsters. They were tough and quite deadly. The lizard's eyes were terrifyingly violent, enough to scare off the weak. The arrogant extra couldn't see why the others were having trouble with such weaklings. He was able to annihilate the creatures with a smug grin, as it barely took any effort. His skills earned him applause from the other candidates, so full of himself. He declared he wasn't a mediocre like the rest, and this difficulty was frankly insulting. The extras were glad to follow him, hoping to stay safe. With his new fans, Lennox warned that they'd get a front row seat to his power. and that weaklings were only good for wandering. After exploring the dungeon, the group found a massive set of doors. This had to be the final chamber. He hoped it would be a little entertaining. To his surprise, several level D monsters guarded the room, and the jewels were placed on an altar at the far end. One of the creatures began to shamble toward the group. Lennox believed he could slice it apart, landing several blows on the monster, but its hide was incredibly tough and so resilient it took 0 damage. Now, it was the creature's turn to strike back. For the first time in this dungeon, the arrogant extra felt the pressure from a mere monster. The hit was so powerful that he was thrown completely off balance. He couldn't believe his attacks had no effect at all. Even the other extras watched in stunned disbelief. Their worry grew as the other creatures turned their attention to them. The young man had to act fast to save his skin. He managed to strike a monster attacking him, only to find that physical attacks were totally useless against it. Meanwhile, the woman was struggling against the monster that could fly. This beast could launch its feathers like daggers without ever needing to get close. Lennox finally grasped the true difficulty of this final exam. There would be a monster designed to counter each of their divine abilities. Against that stone beast, he was utterly useless. Paralyzed by fear, he shut his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But the terrifying creature was obliterated before it could land the final blow. He opened his eyes, completely awestruck. Belle felt relieved. If he had been a moment later, the worst would have happened. He actually had some fun during the hunt. Lennox recognized the boy instantly. It was that little nobody from the exam. A monster immune to physical strikes was now closing in on him. Belle had to switch tactics to handle this one. A sword would be the perfect tool for the job. Lennox was shocked as the boy's divine weapon began to transform. Belle eliminated that creature with a single, clean strike. Now, he had to deal with the one in the air. He had the perfect gear for that, capable of firing multiple shots. He peppered the beast's body with bullets, turning it into a sieve with wings, the Saishit. Other extras couldn't believe this boy was so strong when his divine weapon was just an empty scabbard. Lennox couldn't fathom how it was possible for him to wield multiple divine weapons. Not to mention the boy had complete mastery over every single one. With time running out, he had to finish off the monsters quickly. Watching from the sidelines, the arrogant extra couldn't accept that a kid could be so skilled. While he was lost in his shock, the protagonist kept wiping out the creatures. With everything neatly handled, he just needed to grab one of the jewels. He had finally reached the altar where they were placed. The extras swarmed him, starting their pathetic flattery, something the protagonist despises. They quickly showed their toxic nature, belittling the one they had just praised. They claimed that, compared to the kid, he was a total piece of trash, and they were wrong to ever trust him. Lennox's ego had been utterly shattered by this experience. The two extras thought they'd collect the 2 remaining jewels. Without a word, the boy simply summoned his hammer. He'd already secured the jewel he needed to pass, and now he was ready for a little entertainment. He brought the hammer down with immense force onto the altar. The 2 bootlickers were shocked, asking what in the world he was doing. The boy had shattered the remaining jewels, holding up the single one that was left. He told them if they wanted it so badly, they could just try and take it. He said they were not only useless, but were pathetic flatterers who leech off others' talents and who enjoy mocking those they can no longer use. None of them were worthy of the title of knight. Being scolded by a child was a devastating blow to their pride. Belle started walking out, leaving the extras behind. Lennox seemed to grow from that lecture, admitting his weakness and arrogance, and even thanking Belle for the lesson, vowing it wouldn't be his end. The protagonist was surprised by his honesty and his ambition, confirming they would surely meet again one day. Outside, the boy celebrated. He would finally be a level C knight, and after hunting so many monsters, his mana had grown significantly. Now, he just needed to earn some respect in his own house so he could protect his sister. At last, he arrived at the Duke's estate to share the good news, but the Duke appeared to be in a grim meeting with knights plotting to take down the Malaya family. 3 level B paladins were approaching their lands. The Duke's house had been tasked with handling them. It seemed another noble family had clashed with these paladins. Rumor has it these knights have enchanted their weapons using forbidden magic. Those level B paladins now understood why they were summoned here. The Duke declared that they could not let karma continue its course. They had to be eliminated without delay. One of the young men, but they noticed one knight was missing. Jin was nowhere to be found. Just then, a young man appeared, asking what this little gathering was for. All eyes snapped towards the newcomer. He declared this organization was already finished, because he, the next duke, would personally see to it. Meanwhile, one of the maids brought a meal to her lady, announcing that dinner was served. Sarah moved to sit at the table. With practiced politeness, she thanked her, but the maid left without a second glance, not even acknowledging the gesture. A deep sadness clouded Sarah's face. She stared at her food without any appetite. Suddenly, her brother burst into the room, announcing his grand arrival. His eyes were filled with pure joy. A smile finally blossomed on Sarah's face. Belle told her he'd handled important business and, of course, brought her gifts. Laid out on the table was a complete feast. Sarah's eyes lit up at the apple pie. She hoped they could enjoy it all together, in her brother's company. But he couldn't relax just yet. Their usual meals were scraps, since the servants despised the concubine's children. He swore to work harder for his sister's sake, starting immediately. Back at the Duke's meeting, he was impressed one of his sons handled karma, all by himself. This could only mean Jin had reached level A. As expected of the Duke's heir, he was on another level entirely. With that, Jin took a seat at the table. He asked if his father had more to say. He mentioned, the king has assigned their family a new task to escort Princess Ratagvalen. One of the knights questioned the royal guard's absence. Another argued royalty should not have been involved, even with Karmagon. The safest proposed route was through Rakata. While they were talking, another figure entered. A boy told them to wait before deciding. His arrival silenced the room. Everyone turned to stare. The knights recognized him instantly. It was Belle. The Duke couldn't hide his satisfaction with his son's timing. It seemed his exam was over. Showing his certificate, Belle confirmed he was now officially level C, an impressive feat for someone so young. The Duke demanded to know why he'd interrupted. Belle wanted to propose a different route. One knight scoffed, surprised a boy had anything to add. The Rakata route lacks monsters, which is exactly why it's crawling with bandits, and the journey would take 3 whole days. He proposed they cut through the monster plains instead. One of the Chomshis knights immediately protested the danger, but the boy knew exactly what monsters lived there. Mostly chimeras and horrors of the dark. Both are nocturnal creatures. Traveling by day would be perfectly safe. Better yet, the trip would only take a single day. The protesting knight had to concede. The logic was sound. The Duke saw his son's confidence and his impressive knowledge about monsters. Now, for his real motive, Belle formally requested to be part of the escort mission. Confident he could protect the princess, his bold stance gave the Duke pause. That's when Jin finally spoke. A menacing aura flooded the entire room. He demanded to know why this mutt was speaking to them. His energy was so intense, a nearby plant withered. Belle had forgotten how suffocating his brother's intimidation truly was, but even that wasn't enough to make him back down. Revealing his own divine weapon, he declared he was just as serious. He would protect the princess, no matter what happens. Intrigued, Jin challenged if he could stop him. Belle simply stated that a knight always keeps his word. Jin's servant ordered the boy to be silent, calling his words blasphemy against his master. This was Razor, his brother's secretary, a powerful level B paladin. Jin watched on, clearly entertained. He ordered Razor to test the boy's strength. The secretary revealed his divine weapon, prepared to. It was time to teach the boy his true status. A harsh reminder meant for the son of a concubine. A cruel smile formed as he slowly advanced toward him, who remained still, keenly aware of his surroundings. The secretary prepared to launch his attack, unleashing the first blow. Belle realized this was tougher than he thought. Even so, he managed to defend himself efficiently, which left the secretary impressed. Jin also seemed pleased with what he saw. That was faster than they'd anticipated, but it was too soon to defeat a level B paladin. Just then, with a firm and authoritative voice, the Duke intervened. That's enough, he stated, declaring Belle would lead the task. The secretary couldn't believe his ears. Since Jin had already dealt with karma, the mission would be in Changit. A curious first assignment? Belle vowed not to fail, offering his thanks. But Jin watched him with a sinister grin. Something was afoot. Belle's destination, the royal palace. He'd never been to such a grand place. But at the main gate, the guards blocked his path, unimpressed. Entry wasn't so simple. He presented his paladin credentials, calmly announcing his duty. He was the princess's royal escort. They scoffed. A C-rank paladin? This kid impossible. Still, his papers checked out, so they let him pass. The guards doubted if a boy could truly protect Her Highness. Just then, the royal carriage arrived. How cute, she remarked, almost dismissively. She then announced his services were not required. Meanwhile, a man on a throne inquired of the princess. Had she departed yet? His aide confirmed her journey was underway, with plenty of guards in tow. And the Duke's son was with her. He learned this escort was Belle, a mere child. A child that talented must be a prodigy. He warned his subordinate to be careful, authorizing him to use the secret weapon, if necessary. But with blades emerging, the man smirked. There would be no need. His specialty. Silent, unseen elimination. The carriage rumbled on, the air inside thick with tension. The princess, our protagonist, and her guards. The mission seemed simple, but its weight was immense. Success was vital for his sister's sake. But something felt off. He felt distinctly unwelcome. He decided to ask, despite the rudeness. He needed to know why the princess had dismissed him. Why did she say he wasn't needed? After a pause, she answered. She hated relying on others. She had her own divine weapon. She wasn't weak. Wow, he thought. She's even more prideful than he'd imagined. As they passed through the city, something sparked to life within the princess. Her eyes lit up with excitement at the view. He smiled at her rare joy, but she seemed annoyed by his gaze. He quickly apologized, explaining she reminded him of his sister. She would have the exact same expression. Looking at the lively streets, the princess asked if he and his sister were close. Belle confirmed they played often. Since she was just a child, their games were simple. The princess admitted she had many siblings, but she couldn't trust a single one. Belle guessed it was about the throne. A pang of pity hit him. He understood her plight, confessing his own situation was similar. His own siblings often tormented them, because they were children of a concubine. With their mother gone, they had no defender. The princess seemed intrigued by his story. Belle offered a kind ear, saying he understood how she must feel. But her pride flared up again. She refused to rely on anyone, especially the likes of him. He couldn't possibly know. Her struggle? His assumption was an insult. Along the road, beyond the city walls, they were being observed. That night, the inevitable happened. They'd reached their destination on schedule. But the journey had exhausted the princess. The gates opened to a welcome party, led by a strange man. Who was this knight? He introduced himself as Peter, declaring how glad they were to finally receive her. The name Peter rang a bell, but Belle couldn't place it. This welcome felt wrong. Why meet them outside the walls? The ambushers were poised to strike, with the royal party exposed. Belle saw plenty of guards, yet his unease grew. Suddenly, a dagger flew toward them. He reacted instantly, his divine weapon deflecting the blade. The princess and her retinue gasped in shock. The attack had begun. A volley of daggers rained down upon her. This many foes spelled trouble, but Peter sprang into action. His expert swordsmanship created a shield around the princess. He vowed not to let a single scratch reach her. Seeing his skill, Belle guessed he must be B rank. The assassins began to retreat, the ambush a failure. Peter ordered his knights to give chase immediately. He would escort the princess from the castle. Belle watched as they led her away. She glanced back, her expression filled with dread. They assured her she was now safe, but she insisted she could defend herself. As another knight vowed protection, he was struck down. The culprit was none other than Peter. In that instant, she knew. The true threat was right beside her. Peter glanced at the fallen guard. What a pointless sacrifice. The princess was trapped. Then Peter spoke, telling her this was the end. But despite her claims of self-defense, the princess was utterly helpless. The knight advanced slowly. Terror paralyzed her, sealing away her divine arms. His twisted smile revealed his true nature. The princess desperately needed a savior. A window shattered. Peter was stunned by the sudden turn. One of his men was gone, and the boy, the escort, was the cause. Sorry I'm late, he said, dropping down from the window. He glanced at the princess, declaring, I'll take it from here. Peter was certain that his strategy had lured the guards away. This kid stood no chance of defeating him. And then our hero placed the man's face. But Peter was completely baffled. Your real name is Von Wiggle. The knight was absolutely stunned by this revelation. He never imagined the child knew. His divine weapon twin sets of 3 thunder dice. He'd slain counts and even taken down a marquis. Impressed, he demanded to know how. The boy knew because in a past life, he'd brought him to justice himself. He knew all the facts. He just never thought he'd target the princess. But his fate was sealed. Now, this mere child was intimidating him. Peter had to admit it was an interesting situation. Even if the kid knew him, he could never defeat a B-rank paladin. And a B rank was a tough foe. But against this guy, it would be no problem at all. Irritated by the boy's sheer arrogance, he swore to make him eat those words. But our hero knew his first move a volley of daggers. And right on cue, he threw them. The boy dodged them all effortlessly. He already knew the surprise attack was next. A diagonal slash with his right hand. Peter was shocked that every attack had missed. But our hero had already foreseen the attack from behind. His hand was poised to summon his divine sword. With it, he easily parried the surprise blow. He knew all these moves. Peter couldn't understand how this little brat could possibly match his speed. Belle declared he could end this at any moment. If you value your life, surrender. But his opponent was consumed by pure rage. Feeling belittled, he vowed to slice him into pieces. When enraged, his attacks became predictable. That was his fatal weakness. He delivered a flurry of blows, but not a single one reached the child. The princess was amazed. He neutralized every single attack. The princess realized she had just been all talk. A ring on her finger began to shine. But the protagonist, out of patience, warned, "I'm ending this now." His first true attack was a direct hit. Peter was injured. He had to rethink his strategy. He realized all his movements were being read perfectly. It was happening just as his boss warned. This boy was a prodigy, or something else entirely. He couldn't let his guard down. Cornered, he would use his ultimate trump card. Our hero knew. He'd use his ultimate skill, an insurmountable light barrier. But our hero declared it was no problem. Peter saw this as sheer impudence. So he began to unseal the small, potent vial. Our hero tensed, knowing exactly what it was. Those were the tears of the Dragon King. Smashing it on the ground unleashed a powerful stimulant, an item of incredible rarity. It briefly multiplies the user's mana reserves. Peter swore he'd make the boy regret his confidence. He hurled his daggers, but this time was different. Their power was on another level entirely. The boy had to be careful. The blades now surrounded him, stopping in midair to encircle him. Peter was sure of his victory. The boy was now trapped inside the light barrier. His body began to lift, pulled by some unseen force. The princess was worried for her. Bodyguard. He tried to use his shield to escape, but the wind from his weapon wasn't strong enough. And Peter wasn't done yet. His daggers began to glow with an intense electric light. Energy surged through the barrier, and the boy cried out in agony. Peter declared, the speed was overwhelming. About to pass out. He knew this couldn't be the end. Just then, arrows sliced through the room, their target the assassin's daggers. This strike shattered the barrier completely. Only then did Peter grasp what was happening. The princess had finally unleashed her divine weapon. That paladin was risking his life to save her. She couldn't stay frozen in fear forever. Her intervention only made Peter more furious. He charged his victim, ready to finish the job. And now the princess was overcome with fear. But that small opening was all the help he needed. The assassin finally realized he was in deep trouble. A deep and decisive blow struck him down, completely incapacitating him. Belle had won the duel. His opponent's body collapsed, utterly motionless. Once recovered, he asked if the princess was harmed. With sorrow in her eyes, she said nothing. Instead, she quietly approached the boy. Touching his face, she warned him softly that he was the only one injured in that room. She apologized, saying he'd been dragged into her family's succession conflict. But the boy stated it was not an issue. In fact, the princess was as strong as she had claimed. She replied that he was the strong one here. Deeply grateful, she assured him of her support. If he ever needed her, she would stand up for him. Kneeling, the boy expressed his own gratitude. She looked upon him with great admiration. Removing a ring, she asked for him to keep it. A small artifact as a token of her gratitude. Belle knew this was no ordinary trinket. It was no ordinary ring at all. At last, the mission was completed without any casualties. He was received by the Duke immediately. He reported everything about escorting the princess. Belle stated he finished the job perfectly. But the Duke noticed there was more to the story. Upon the boy's finger rested the Ring of Solomon, a gift from the princess proving her trust. This was a priceless artifact, a royal family treasure, a legendary source of mana. It was unbelievable the boy had obtained this item. He might be more impressive than the Duke knew. Unable to hide his delight, he made an announcement. He would enroll the boy in Athena at once. He didn't expect this news at all. This was an elite academy for paladins. Access was exclusive to the most elite families. Almost all students had private tutors. Tradition says only potential heirs attend the academy. This could only mean he was now in the running. The Duke ordered him to keep training for now. He would be notified when his classes were to begin. But the boy still had something to say, and his father was curious to know what it was. Standing before him, he rose to make his request. Later, he was outside with his very happy sister. She could not believe this was her new room. Her bed was so much more comfortable now. The Duke himself had granted them this. He had them moved to the main house for respect. The girl couldn't hide her absolute pleasure. Then, she noticed something different on his hand. A small wound was there. He said he'd hurt himself on his last mission. This knowledge made her a little worried. But soon, they were back to playing together. That sight made him feel much better. Sarah would be well cared for from this day on. Now he had to focus on his own future. Because in 5 years, a catastrophe will occur. His sister might be in danger yet again. He needs to find out who is responsible for this. And for that, he must become the family's heir. Jin's servant entered his room to report something. Deeply, His servant flinches at the sight. Jin reveals a sick pleasure in watching things break just at their peak, after they've reached perfection. And so, his twisted wish will be granted. Though his master has given the command, the servant sees this as a reckless gamble. That boy wields divine artifacts and has already managed to defeat a B-rank paladin. He must move now, purely out of caution. Meanwhile, Belle is outside, deep in training. He needs to master his unique skills, honing them before the academy. The only problem is, doing so requires hunting down countless monsters. In his sword's reflection, he suddenly spots his brother's man approached. The servant's formal tone was a complete surprise, especially from a supposed enemy. He asked what his brother's man wanted. The man was apologizing for his previous disrespect. Pointing a blade at a duke's son was a grave offense. Our hero wondered if he'd misjudged him. He told the man not to worry about the past. He thanked the servant for his courtesy, but the man had another topic to discuss. Noticing his sword, the servant made a request join him on a monster subjugation mission, a very strange task. His master Jin and the paladins had other plans. Impressed by the boy's skill, he offered to help. A truly suspicious invitation. He couldn't refuse. Not as the duke's son. Cautiously, he accepted the offer, and the young man thanked him deeply, all while planning his murder. Our hero simply asked their destination. They were headed to a remote place called Idka. He knew it well. It was the perfect place to use a special method to raise his mana. Using ambrosia, a rare item that permanently boosts a user's mana, the carriage rolled toward the monster zone. Our hero sat inside, eager for a fight, though he dreamed of ambrosia. But the chances of finding any were slim. It required entering a hidden dungeon, and he knew the location of one. A secret dungeon would appear near the city of Ithaca. As night fell, they had to find a place to stay. The servant then gave him his instructions. Their targets were leviathans. Reports claimed there were several in the area, vicious sea monsters. But it was late, so the hunt would begin at dawn. They had to rest. The boy announced he was going to his room. As he climbed the stairs, he felt a dark gaze. The servant thought him a complete fool, unaware of the plot. He would make it look like a tragic accident. No matter his talent, he was still sea level. It would be easy to finish him. In his room, he assumed Razor was asleep. He summoned his shield, using wind magic, sending it out the window. The artifact unexpectedly transformed into a platform capable of flight. His destination, the hidden dungeon deep in the monster forest. He and his master had found it long ago. No one else knew where it was. Finally, his feet hit the ground. He had located the dungeon. A small entrance stood before him. He ventured inside and discovered a massive portal. This was exactly what he was looking for. Hidden dungeons are told apart by their color. Blue gates are A level. A green gate is B level. Clearing it would grant ambrosia, equal to the dungeon's level. That would be a massive help. He was ready to step through. He just had to beat the boss. In his past life, he'd fought it as a mere D level. His master warned him. It was too soon, and it would be just as hard now. But he couldn't back down from fear. He placed his hand on the gate. Passing through, he steeled his resolve. He had to get stronger, and fast. Inside the dungeon, he fought the first creature, but it was hardly a challenge. He calmly observed the ghost knight's movements as it charged again. Its strikes were quick and precise, but our hero parried them all. And in that moment, he found an opening in its defense, striking the knight while it was unprotected. But the blow wasn't enough to kill it. In fact, the impact threw the boy backwards. He needed a new weapon. Now, he wielded a powerful hammer. With it in hand, he landed another heavy blow. Still, the creature remained unscathed. Physical attacks couldn't even scratch that armor. He'd have to try a different strategy. Switching back to his sword, he made its blade shine with magic. The enchanted strikes hit the armor, but still caused no damage. He had never seen such a monster, yet he knew it was only sea level. The ghost knight was pressuring him. Again, he needed a new plan immediately. If the creature had a shield, it must also have a weakness, and it seems he's figured it out. A bullet coated in mana should do the trick. Now, he was adding his fire breath to it. He began to charge the powerful attack. The ghost knight continued its steady advance. Only 2 seconds left. The creature was getting closer and closer. Once the distance closes, his attack is fully charged. The blast shoots toward the armor, proving to be incredibly effective. The creature crashes to the ground, utterly defeated. The boy stumbles back. From the recoil, with the fight over, he sighs in relief. A magic attack was that beast's critical weakness, as long as it was powerful enough. Without this divine weapon, he would have been in serious trouble. The boss monster here must be terrifying, as expected of a hidden dungeon. But even so, looting rare items from these monsters is a huge opportunity. That potion can restore his stamina and mana. The boy drinks it down, needing the strength to press on. And that's exactly what he does, carving through the creatures in his path until he reaches his destination. Beyond that huge gate must be the dungeon's apex predator, a demon, a giant serpent. He'll find out soon enough. Finally, he steps inside the main chamber. It looks just like an arena. The boy hears a sound ahead. A shadowy form, like a knight, materializes. His body is racked with chills as his mouth goes dry. The pressure in the air is crushing. And the creature his eyes finally see is truly dangerous. Its eyes glow with an intense scarlet light. The knight advances slowly. Surely, this is the final boss of the dungeon. He prepares to face this terrible monster. The boy must remain completely alert. The ghost knight glances at his sword, then moves it with blinding speed. In the blink of an eye, the boy must react or this is game over. The resulting destruction is absolutely overwhelming. Belle gains some distance, but he's still dodging every strike. If any of those attacks connect, it will be fatal. Once more, the creature lunges, forcing him to leap away. This is the opening he needed, to summon his own sword. Now, he can finally fight back. Finding an opening, he strikes the ghost knight in the back, but its armor is far thicker than he imagined. Once again, he's having trouble even scratching. That steel? There's no time to think. He must focus on dodging. He decides to try the one strategy that worked before with his fire cannon. It's the best plan he's got. This time, he'll charge the attack for much longer, 5 seconds in total. He just needs a little more time to charge the blast. And as soon as it's ready, he fires at the ghost knight, praying this will be enough to win. The attack screams toward the creature. The impact is a direct hit, with no defense at all. To his utter shock, it had absolutely no effect. He spots a strange mark on the ghost knight's chest. That resistance to magic was on another level. Once again, the boy is completely cornered. His agility is the only thing keeping him alive, needing more defense. He summons his shield. With it, he manages to block a direct hit, but that destructive power is far too dangerous. With trembling hands, he realizes something has changed. The ghost knight is changing its attack pattern. This time, it's coming from above, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Belle must react with every ounce of speed he has. The Black Knight's sword slams down, utterly destroying the arena floor. In the rising dust, he completely loses sight of the boy. Finally, Belle reveals himself, creating even more distance. He's too low on mana to pierce that armor, and realizes the dust has hidden his enemy until he spots a sudden glow. His entire body screams with a bad omen. The creature's sword is flying right at him. He's forced to use the shield's protection to avoid being skewered. The blade ricochets away, and the boy realizes the assault isn't over. That attack was just a feint. The real danger was coming from behind. There was nothing he could do. His body screams from the brutal impact. He lies helpless before the creature, and it is still not satisfied, raising its foot to crush the life from its enemy. Though he was completely weakened, Belle manages one last desperate dodge. He only regained his strength thanks to an elixir. If it weren't for that, he would have already been defeated. The problem is, he has nothing left to rely on, and the beast reclaimed its sword. With victory impossible, he had to make a desperate gambit. His heaviest weapon was the shield. This sparked an insane idea. He began to picture it, hurling it using wind magic. His defense had become an offensive weapon. It was now the strongest projectile he had. But his plan failed. The ghost knight actually dodged. He never expected that. Now, he was completely unarmed. Nothing could stop that incoming blade. Cornered, he knew he couldn't dodge, and this time, no shield could protect him. He needed to stop its trajectory, a desperate gamble for survival. The shield struck true, catching the beast off guard. That brief opening let him evade the blade. Seizing the moment, he advanced, determined to change his approach. He switched tactics, swinging his hammer with all his might. The spectral knight knew what was coming. There was no escape from this blow. The resulting impact was utterly devastating. With that, the creature crashed to the floor. Seemingly defeated, Belle gasped for air after the brutal exchange. His shield gambit was reckless, yet it had paid off spectacularly. He had to finish the entity within the armor, but he hesitated a moment too long. In that instant, the knight rose once more. This fight was far from over. Strangely, its armored plates started to fall away, unveiling its true nature. It was a form the boy couldn't comprehend. The monster then reached for a hook on its sword's guard. From it, the creature drew a strange new instrument that resembled a type of latch. Its blade remained sheathed. The secret was finally out. The boy never saw this coming. Now, a new foe stood before him. The creature's speed had increased dramatically. Belle struggled just to track its relentless assault. Hurled violently into a wall, agony seared through his entire body. Crumpling to the floor, his strength gave out. Still, the monster advanced, closing the distance. His consciousness began to fade. The dungeon boss prepared the final, killing blow. Though his power was spent, the boy fought to rise one last time. To do nothing here meant certain death. He could barely even lift. His own head, the fatal slash, descended. But he blocked it. He had activated the gauntlet. The creature's luck had finally run out. The monster was stunned. Its prey had seemed completely exhausted. At the same time, the boy also manifested his sword. For the first time, he was pushing the enemy back. Now, the real battle was about to begin. They clashed in a flurry of strikes. With newfound agility, their fight raged. Across the entire arena, unarmored, the monster was incredibly strong. But it was no match for the protagonist wielding the gauntlet's power. He felt certain he could end this now. But then, the colored mark on its body glowed a brilliant red. The protagonist's blade sliced right through the creature's afterimage. He knew instantly he'd hit nothing and had to defend against a strike. He could barely even perceive. That crimson glow made the creature faster still. And so, the protagonist was forced on the defensive again. But he wasn't beaten yet. To win, he needed more power. As more energy surged through him, the more perilous the situation became. This flood of strength was dangerously intoxicating. A dark thought formed. In his mind, the gauntlet was cursed. To claim its power, the price was his very soul. And the protagonist was about to accept the deal. A dark aura swirled around him as he began to lose control. He couldn't resist. Such overwhelming power. His very being felt like it was fading. The entity whispered that he needed this strength. The reason? For all his suffering was his own weakness. It's why others always trampled him. Because he was weak. He had already lost his life once. He had to be tired of being so powerless. Now, it was his turn to be the one who takes whatever he wants by force. Slowly, his self-control was slipping away. The monster saw this as the perfect chance to finish him. But his foe had already evolved his power, now matching the creature's own immense strength. The shockwave from their clash was apocalyptic. Only one thing fueled him now, a relentless urge for pure destruction. He didn't want victory. He only wanted to annihilate. This creature was merely his first obstacle. After this, he would destroy everything in his path, even on the edge of losing himself. A memory of his sister surfaced. A single moment of clarity. Belle was still battling the formidable monster. He knew he couldn't pay that price, not when his beloved sister was waiting for his return. He didn't fight for the thrill of battle. His true reason for seeking power was the need to protect his sister. With this resolve, he regained command of himself. It was time for this beast to offer up its power. He effortlessly shoved the dungeon boss back. The gauntlet continued to tempt him. With his soul as payment, he would gain endless strength. But he rejected it and charged forward. The creature lunged to meet his attack. They both unleashed mighty blows, once again locking into that high-speed combat. The monster tried a surprise mana blast, but his speed was simply superior. The boy deftly disarmed the beast, severing one of its limbs from its body. That strike would stop the creature's attack. Finally, he found the opening he needed, cleaving the creature clean in two. At last, the monster was completely subdued. The victor of this battle is named Belle. As power flowed through him, he watched the creature's body, its life force gone, begin to disintegrate. The trial was finally over. He could now remove the cursed gauntlet. That foe was far, too powerful. The boy nearly lost himself completely. He must avoid using that power at all costs. Before him, a small vial appeared. This was the item he sought, the ambrosia. If he drinks this, his mana will equal a B-rank paladin's, letting him use his divine armament's skills. The thing is, he'd never seen a vial of ambrosia and felt uneasy, but knew he had to drink it for his future. At first, he felt absolutely no change. Then, he felt his mana start increasing exponentially. This was unbelievable. He reached B rank in an instant. After the power came the pain. The boy could barely take it. His chest burned as if it were on fire. The sheath on his waist began to glow intensely. Unsure what was happening, he fell to the ground, unconscious. Now, he was lying in the center of a magic circle, waking up, still terrified. He had no idea where this place was. It was as if he'd been sent to another dimension. A man welcomed him to this place. He had finally awakened. It had been a long time since they'd last seen each other. Even with his face hooded, the boy recognized him. There was no doubt, this was his master. But other people were there too, a girl holding a hammer, and a hidden man, the bearer of the gauntlet. Like the knight with the sword, he was welcomed warmly by all of them. It was the first time in his life he had experienced such a thing. This was the dimension of souls. Seeing his disciple again made the man emotional. The boy was also happy with this reunion. His master's name is Rios. He was the one who gave him Avalon, the original wielder of the shield Achilles. Seeing his master so unexpectedly was rewarding. But he couldn't understand anything. He didn't know how he was remembered. Since he'd returned in time, the master said he had watched his pupil from this place, witnessing his death and rebirth. At this, the boy became curious about the nature of this space. This place existed within Avalon itself. It's where the divine armaments are kept, with the souls of their successors. This statement left the boy completely intrigued. He wanted to know where his former master's body was. He replied his body was likely in the mountains, enjoying his retirement. Avalon is a divine armament that binds to its bearer's soul. By taking it through time, its wielder lost their connection. But his consciousness remains linked to his body. The boy guessed that returning to the past was his armament's doing. But the master doubted that. At least, he was not aware the armament was capable of that. The boy hadn't expected that even his master could not give him this answer. Reunited with him again, he said the boy did an excellent job. Protecting his sister? He even congratulated him for it. But the boy felt embarrassed by the praise. He wants to know why he is here in this place with him. His master was just about to explain, but one of the souls there began to move. He said they were wasting far too much time and also wanted to speak. His name is Raven, the owner of the fire spitters. The master warned that he had not finished talking to his disciple yet. He asked him to be more flexible, as he is not some stone golem. Before them, the boy just watched, not understanding anything at all. Introducing himself to the sixth successor, he said it was a pleasure to meet him. The boy was thoughtful for a moment, and when he went to touch his hand, he realized he was being teased. That man was extremely relaxed, something the boy couldn't understand. Seeing his confusion, Raven started to find it quite amusing. He said that the sixth successor was indeed very naive, and then the girl joined them. Charlotte warned. The new guy was still adjusting, but the kid called it a harmless prank, asking Horu to back him up. However, this successor was painfully shy. Being number 4 meant he begged for silence. The girl knew, though, that Raven loved to tease people. He told her not to get so worked up, or it would wreck her good looks and give her wrinkles. Charlotte was not amused by that crack. The master tried to mediate, but she wasn't having any of Reg's attitude. Before retorting, she had to endure the Joker's nonsense. It felt so odd for the boy. Seeing his master so utterly chill in this mess, it just proved his seniors were truly powerful. His master had spoken of them. They were legendary heroes who fought ancient evils. The man with the blade demanded they cut to the chase. The first successor, Adam, confirmed their gathering, had a singular purpose. They had summoned the boy to this dimension to warn him. Hearing this, he asked what this was all about. The sixth successor must master the powers of his divine arms. This news completely stunned him. Mastered divine arms radiate an overwhelming amount of mana. If he were to unlock them now, his body would be obliterated. That explained the agonizing pain. His vessel needed time to mature for such power. But the boy had urgent matters. He refused to halt his progress now. He needed all that strength simply to protect his sister. Adam saw the boy's resolve was unbreakable, leaving only one option. On the table now, he decided to crush the boy right here. He never expected Adam to be so fast. He needed to block the attack immediately, but he was already behind him. The boy was struck by the flat of the blade. Adam hoped this would show him he was still immature, but he failed to account for the fact his attack was blocked. In light of this, Adam had to rethink his plan. The boy's recent battles had fueled his rapid growth. Perhaps he was truly capable after all. He must first master the sword. All the successors awaited that moment. The boy asked if this meant he was finally accepted. Adam conceded that by focusing on one ability, control might be possible. Giving the boy permission to unlock the level B skills of the sword caliburn, he would get the others when the time was right, just like the level A skills, which were truly extraordinary powers. The boy declared he would unlock them immediately. Adam smirked at the kid's conviction, and the comedian wished number 6 the best of luck. They all prayed the main character could protect his little sister. They would continue to observe him from the shadows. It was time for the boy to return. He woke up back inside the dungeon. He felt no pain, but his body felt strange, gazing at his sword's power. He was eager to test it on the monsters. After all, he now knew the sword's unique ability to reach the monster's location. They had to take a boat. They were now in the middle of their journey. The boy warned that the Leviathans would soon appear, so it was time to prepare for a fight. Little did he know. Everyone there planned to attack him. Even the barber was part of this conspiracy. The boy started noticing odd things about this quest. Why would a level B knight be sent to handle level C monsters? And why would he require assistance? It was clear. The man had something else planned. Our hero knew a surprise attack would be a problem. That's why he refused to take his eyes off him for a second. He was told they were getting closer, but the area remained unnaturally calm. Looking over, he saw the man had already drawn his dagger. Our protagonist stared, him down, slicing his own arm. He announced they first needed to attract the creatures. He used his own blood as the bait. It would be enough to drive the beasts into a frenzy. As predicted, it didn't take long for the Chumchi first monster to surface, but then several more appeared, far more than anyone had been expecting. Since they were sea creatures, our hero suggested they split up to protect the boat. But he couldn't let the boy go alone, highly suspicious. He demanded to know his reasons. Finally revealing his true colors, he snarled that the boy wasn't leaving here alive. He attacked, trapping our protagonist's leg with his whip. He realized he was at a strategic disadvantage. The one who trapped him was one of the Kemsend boatmen. He then threw back his hood to reveal his face. It was Spencer, someone our protagonist knew all too well. The other guy told him to just do what they planned, using his power. He lifted the protagonist into the air, one of his legs encased in ice. This was not going to end well. As he was flung into the sea, Spencer wasn't done yet. He used his magic to make the ice even bigger. This way, it would be nearly impossible for the boy to resurface. Then, completely ignoring physics, the huge chunk of ice began to sink. They hoped the creatures would devour him. Now, they could claim the boy died fighting heroically. They just needed the monsters to leave no trace. The boy desperately needed to breathe, to return to the surface. He came up with a plan for his shield. Since it could generate wind, this might actually be possible. What was impossible was the sinking ice. He began using magic for a small pocket of air, using the inside of the behind his shield. He caught a quick breath. He never expected these two would team up to betray him. He was wary of Razor, but had no idea a second traitor lurked nearby. A huge portion of the surface around the Isome boat was now frozen solid, but that wasn't his only issue. The water was teeming with deadly creatures. His first priority was his trapped leg. Using the shield, he could surely shatter all this ice. At last, he finally broke free, but his ankle was badly injured. The whip must have sliced him when it made contact with his skin. The scent of blood alerted the creatures. Wasting no time, he summoned his sword. He didn't have the numbers, but this was a perfect training opportunity. This was his first real challenge since being reborn. Now he could finally test his new skill. His first target was one of the creatures. The blade began to glow intensely. It fired an energy blast, and other light swords formed in the water, wiping out every threat. It had been a while since he'd used this, the summoning of the Starblade formation. Time to enjoy the hunt. More creatures were now swarming in his direction, but the light blades moved to intercept their targets. They shot straight towards the monsters. This is the true power of Caliburn. It summons glowing swords that fly and are just as sharp as the original blade. Soon, every last creature would be annihilated. Above, things weren't much better. They had to decimate the monsters, using the ice for footing. It had been about 5 minutes since it all went down. They were sure the boy had already departed from this world. Spencer was impressed by Razor's cunning, a truly brilliant plan. Plus, he could defeat all these creatures so easily. It was a good thing the kid stayed near him, or he'd perish by the hands of these creatures. He thought himself useful, not noticing the ice under his feet had started to crack. The fractures spread, and as he went to investigate, he was suddenly attacked. The other guy was shocked by this. Something big happened underwater. A huge hole appeared in the ice. This was a total disaster, as a massive creature erupted, ready for a snack. A tentacle shot out from the murky water. Had to move fast to avoid its grasp. This creature was level B, needing several paladins of the same rank to take it down. One wrong move, and his life would be over. As if that wasn't bad enough, the monster had more tricks, firing projectiles at him. But the knight managed to evade them all. Now he faced the incoming tentacles. The guy knew if that thing grabbed him, he would certainly lose his life. The quicker he solved this, the better his odds of survival. His Divine arms let him channel mana into his weapons, unleashing it with his strikes. Since it has a Chai-Chelsea, simple design, his energy blasts are devastatingly strong. He was sure he could down the beast with just one clean hit, but this creature was smarter than it looked. Finally, the knight unleashed his most powerful strike, landing a direct hit on the monster. But the outcome wasn't what he expected, as the creature blocked it using another monster's body. This just made things even more complicated for him since his foe was now absolutely enraged. He had to get back to the safety of the boat. With the ice now completely shattered, he had no footing to attack the creature. And now he had to deal with the other beasts in the water, which were leaping onto the boat to kill all humans. This took his full attention, so he didn't see the approaching tentacle that slammed brutally into his face. His weapons weren't made for facing multiple foes at once, plus he had no environmental advantage. Was leaving the boat not an option? He glanced out as the monster swarmed. The longer he waited, the more dangerous it got. But even more shocking than the monsters was the protagonist suddenly rising from the water. That kid was supposed to be long dead, but here he was, flying on his shield and taking out a few more monsters. The main character saw the traitor was in quite a pickle. He just had to know how the kid managed to stay alive. Despite the betrayal, he was still willing to help them out. But Razor didn't believe the boy could possibly help him. That giant beast is a level B monster. There was no way he could fight that. But the boy was ready to show him up. The closer he got, the more tentacles appeared. But our hero wasn't unprepared. He was still using Caliburn's power. Its blades intercepted every single tentacle. Witnessing this, Razor, he'd truly perfected his weapon's unique power, a feat that should have been impossible. Belle swore he'd turn this beast into fish food. The monster readied another barrage, firing water jets at the fearless boy, an attack powerful enough to destroy the entire ship. But Belle was ready to unveil his trump card, completely changing the light blades formation, merging them into one. The swords combined, creating a gleaming energy sword that fired a focused beam. The creature's blast met the boy's counter, but his will to win was overwhelming. His beam tore straight through the monster's core. The devastating light cut right through it. At last, the beast was defeated. It was an unbelievable display of power. Back on the vessel, he declared Spencer was next on his list, for he had a debt to pay. This kid will be a threat to Jin, the servant thought. And yet, even seeing that power, he resolved to end him now. He sneered that a mere bastard could never beat a level B paladin. Belle approached, amused this knight still, believed he could win. Using Spencer was a cheap shot, born from pure terror. The two warriors sized each other up, then charged. The shriek of their weapons clashing finally rang out. At first, Belle held his ground, until Razor's power made the gap in their raw strength painfully obvious, shoving him back. He smirked, thinking this would be enough to settle the duel. But our hero wasn't done, launching one of his light blades at him. Razor tensed, knowing their danger. Still, just one blade shouldn't be too hard to block. Of course, it was a trap, a feint to distract him from his blind spot. Razor unleashed his own divine weapon's power, utterly shattering the light blade. Its light faded into nothing. He scoffed, convinced the boy could never touch him. For now, the duel between them was a stalemate. Defeating a level B paladin was never easy, but Belle's mana was draining. Fast from using his skills, he only had one last sword left. As the veteran knight, Razor saw the boy couldn't sustain this power. He pressed his advantage, advancing without mercy. To finish this now, his first strike missed, but the second blow of his combo landed squarely. Belle's fragile, untrained body couldn't take the hit. The massive difference in physical strength was becoming a huge problem. He could use Aegis, but he feared being trapped in its darkness. Close combat was too risky, so he switched tactics, firing shots at his foe, who effortlessly dodged them all. This was the opening Belle was waiting for. Realizing the boy's strategy, Razor scoffed at his lack of agility, but he failed to account for the unexpected. Belle used the recoil from his shots to close the distance, accelerating his strikes. He almost landed the blow, only fueling Razor's rage. Seeing his opponent fuming, Belle knew his plan was working perfectly. Razor was blindsided by the final light blade, which impaled his back. He never saw it coming. An injury this severe meant the fight was over. He realized his analysis of the boy's plan was completely wrong. The main character warned him it was over, telling him to abandon any hope of attacking. But the word surrender wasn't in Razor's vocabulary. He saw Belle as a a threat to his master Jin's future. That's why the boy had to be eliminated right now. Hearing this, resolve. Belle asked why he was so loyal to his brother. Razor's mind drifted to a distant memory. In the past, he had been utterly defeated. With no strength left to stand, he knew this was as far as he could go. Just then, a man approached. He stopped before his broken form, assuming this man was the mercenary behind all those crimes. With his last bit of strength, Razor looked up at the figure. The young man opened a vial, pouring its contents over his wounded body. He said it was his lucky day, for his master valued talent. This was the source of his loyalty. He had been saved by Jin, and he would repay that debt with his life, no matter the cost. He then shattered the last of Belle's light blades, its fragments scattered on the ground. Belle realized his foe had already sealed his destiny. He seemed like a brute, but he held a knight's honor. Now, the true battle would begin. Fury still burned in the boy's eyes as he prepared for round 2, but Belle had seen that powerful technique before. It requires a long time to charge. That was his signal to strike first. The boy immediately launched his assault, but as he drew near, a sudden move caught him off guard. Hit by his opponent's knee, he realized he had fallen for a feint. Defeat was now a real possibility. Regaining his focus, he declared this was not the end. He had saved one last trick. A small shard of his sword had survived. He carved a slash across his opponent's back. That final blow left the man crippled. He thought he had shattered every single blade, a fatal miscalculation. The boy only made it look like they were destroyed. And with that clever ruse, he built his winning strategy. It was as if the boy had seen more combat than him. An unsettling thought. That fight was a true challenge. Without his trump card, he would have surely lost. But he defeated Razor, a rank B paladin. This was proof his strength had grown as planned. The ship resumed its course to the continent. Arriving in the city, Sarah began her search for her dear brother, but he was nowhere to be found. She swept through the castle grounds. Still no sign of the boy. Even so, she continued her search until she considered he might not have returned yet. The real issue was that his mission should have ended by now. She then spotted a pair of open doors. The library. Her brother might be inside. She rushed in, hoping to find him, but instead, she came face to face with someone else. Jin stood before her, leaving the girl stunned. Though they were siblings, his presence was crushing. Fear gripped her, but she knew she had to greet him. When she tried, the words caught in her throat. His threatening gaze was enough to paralyze her with terror. Passing by, Jin sneered that she was worthless. Hesitantly, she backed away until she bumped into someone. She turned. It was her brother. He confronted Jin, asking what business he had with Sarah, but he received only silence. The girl was finally relieved. Having found her brother, it was so good to see him back safely. And yet, he was injured once again. He explained he'd faced a powerful monster, a rank B paladin named Razor. Hearing this, Jin showed absolutely no reaction. Belle added that the boy failed his trap. Jin simply said no one cares about that. They are just pebbles in his path, and the same applied to this fool. He would continue on, having no time for such obstacles. But the protagonist had one more thing to say. He told his brother that he would be the one to succeed the Duke, as Jin was unfit to protect their family. Jin instantly spun around. His glare was menacing, his aura enveloping them. It was truly impressive, but not enough to make Belle waver. A faint smirk appeared on Jin's face. Finding this interesting, his smile grew wider. Perhaps watching these pebbles could be amusing after all. Leaving the library, he told his brother to challenge him whenever he dared. Sarah was deeply troubled by that conversation, but she was reassured by our hero, who admitted it was frightening. That pressure is surreal. His brother is on another level. In terms of pure strength, the difference between them is huge. To defeat him, Belle must reach rank A before graduating the academy after this confrontation. A few days went by. He was packed and ready to depart. The Duke was already there, waiting for him. Seeing the boy was fully prepared, he thanked his father for the support he had received. The academy demanded that students have bodyguards. The Duke would provide a rank B paladin for him. The paladin announced he was at the boy's service. Hearing this, Belle wanted to ask the Duke a favor, who allowed the boy to speak his mind. But before he could, he was stunned. His sister appeared with her bags packed. As well, She apologized for her delay, placing her bag down. His request was simple: let his sister accompany him on this journey. The Duke wanted to know his reasoning. Belle didn't want to leave her by herself and wished for them to remain together, but he couldn't permit it. The Academy only allows a bodyguard. This wasn't some pleasure trip. Sarah begged her father to change his mind, but he warned her not to ask. Again, to solve the issue, he asked her to be his bodyguard, because with her by his side, he knows he can anything, even beat an A-rank paladin. The Duke paused, amused by the boy's bold statement, letting him do as he wished. And with that, the carriage set off for the Academy. Sarah was amazed by the incredible sights. Soon, the two arrived at their final destination. What a truly magnificent building. The girl was overjoyed for her brother's success. This was an elite school for nobles. While he attended class, he told his sister to study in their room. They needed to settle in, but they immediately stumbled upon some students sparring. It was just a friendly match, a perfect chance to observe. Sarah was impressed. They all looked strong, but our hero noted they were still just D rank. One boy, however, stood out from the rest. The protagonist noticed him instantly, but he was only C rank. Now only 2 students remained. One boy felt today was his day for sweet victory. He charged his opponent, determined to finally win. Yet, the other boy wasn't the least bit intimidated. He let the attack get dangerously close. Even Sarah got worried for a second. But his response was shocking. All it took was a single, clean blow. He didn't even use a divine weapon. That guy's definitely B rank. Maybe even stronger than him. The other students were stunned by the result. The famous representative of Roth Windsor is no joke. That name sent a chill down the protagonist's spine. They were his family's rivals. This meant he was an enemy to both him and his sister. The Academy's entrance ceremony was about to start. They were congratulating the newly admitted first-year students. This welcome was given by the student council president, who hoped the freshmen were all exceptionally strong. Albert, a third-year student, hails from a family of renowned paladins. They never crossed paths in his past life, but at 18, he was already S-rank. He instantly wondered if this man was involved in that incident. It's very possible he's one of the culprits. Rumor has it that boy is terrifyingly strong, and already a B rank. It seems the other council members are at a similar level. The student council is formed from the top 4 in the martial arts event, with the title of president going to the grand champion. Albert is undeniably powerful. The protagonist wasn't sure if his tormentor was this person, but to prevent that future, he had to show his enemies his true strength. The Academy doesn't bother with council elections. Students are chosen by their combat skills. And our hero wanted to join, just so he could crush Albert in a fight. Inside the classroom, he waited for the teacher. Someone came to sit beside him, asking if the seat was taken. Belle replied that it was empty. The boy introduced himself as Limeflex Seal, hoping for good years ahead. Yes, you heard that right. But something about that name felt oddly familiar. Seeing the protagonist's odd reaction, Lime got a little curious. He brushed it off, but his mind was racing. In a few years, this guy will destroy nobles for a personal grudge, earning the name Knight of Retribution. Even though he was a shadow of his future self, Lime asked for the protagonist's name. He was about to reply, but he remembered his father's warning, don't reveal which house you belong to. Many would try to help him, just because of his family name. That would ruin his entire purpose at the Academy. He had to prove his own worth through pure effort. So he cooked up a new name, Libel Slayer. He would keep his identity a secret until he finally defeated Albert. Hearing that name, Lime figured he was a commoner, too. The insignia on their uniforms showed their social class. Commoners wore a circle, nobles wore a star. Belle confirmed he was a commoner, while Lime came from a barony of commoners. In this school, most students belonged to noble families. Commoners were a tiny minority. Knowing they were the same, he hoped they could become good friends. Befriending a future powerhouse seemed like a smart move for our hero. Lime could be a powerful ally. Unlike his past life, he never bothered making friends. This felt surprisingly nice. Just then, a boy approached, clearly knowing Lime. It looked like he was here to cause trouble. This was Roger. He was surprised to be in the same class as his hometown friend. Everyone knew he was a count's son and already D rank. He smugly wondered how a nobody like Lime got in. Lime quietly said he took the entrance exam like everyone else. Roger offered sarcastic congratulations, making Lime visibly uncomfortable. Stepping closer, he warned that Athena wasn't a place for a commoner. He should know his place and leave. The boy tensed up under Roger's glare. Slaves obey their masters, he sneered. I could ruin you with a single word. Belle finally stepped in, declaring that was enough. Lime grew anxious for his new friend's safety. Roger also turned his attention to Lime, quickly spotting another commoner. He looked down on him with utter disdain. Belle urged the boy to leave. Regardless of his status, Roger decided he would let him go, but not before making a sudden move. He brutally kicked Lime. Belle gasped, worried for her friend. Chuichi savored the moment. Belle called him a disgrace to all paladins. Because he was nobility, he should protect commoners. But Roger sneered that the poor exist only for the noble's gain. Belle warned his view was dangerously narrow. A county can fall just as easily as a commoner. Roger seemed ready to use magic, asking if he wanted a real fight. His divine weapon materialized in his hand. Seeing a battle was unavoidable, he told Lime to stand back. He was preparing to summon his own armament. That certainly piqued Roger's interest. Our hero warned he'd beat some common sense into his thick skull. But seeing the sheath, Roger's scorn grew even deeper. He had to be a nobody with such a pathetic divine armament, one that couldn't even swat a fly. The protagonist smirked. Then you must be less than a fly. Enraged by the commoner's disrespect, Roger decided to end him right there. Our hero was eager to see if he was even capable of it. The entire class was now captivated by the brewing fight. Roger charged, unaware he was a side character. The protagonist stood ready, his eyes locked on his opponent's scythe. But then a mysterious hand appeared, stopping them both. The calming music from her instrument was able to halt the conflict. The sound somehow disarmed the two of them. She told them not to fight, as they were in the same class and should listen to her. Belle was confused by this new girl's appearance, but she continued. Playing her lyre, she introduced herself as Sila, from the prestigious Alpage family, which outranked even Roger's own noble house. Just then, the teacher arrived, ordering the students to their seats. Class was about to begin. For their first test, she would assess their abilities. They were to use their divine weapons on a target as if it were a real monster. They had to strike the golems and show the true power they held. The first student showed his skills, rushing the target with a sword in hand. He swung with all his might, but the target was far too durable. He barely managed to make a scratch, just a shallow cut on its surface. Instantly, the structure began to repair itself, a fact our hero noted. Many other students also attempted to attack it. The teacher noted most students were still at a low E rank, as most could, barely produce any elemental damage. Now it was Lime's turn to display his skills. His spear had zero magic. He might be the only F-rank student in this test. The boy charged the golem, ramming his spear into its core, and like the others, he was thrown back. Roger scoffed, calling him a useless weakling unable to use magic. As Lime struggled up, Roger prepared to show the class the difference between himself and the trash. His divine weapon blazed like a roaring fire. He struck with immense confidence, his scythe's blade sinking deep into the target. He left behind a trail of destruction, impressing some classmates. The teacher was pleased with his performance. He was at a solid D rank. Roger smugly assumed he was the top student in the class. Next up was the mysterious blonde girl. Her moment had finally arrived. She began to play her lyre, and her attack was unleashed. The sound bothered her classmates, but the sound waves were incredibly destructive, causing even more damage to the target. These two were clearly on another level. Roger acted politely towards her, respecting her higher noble status. He was just trying to make a good impression, but she flatly stated that she would rather. He didn't bother. She had been thinking about it. Inside the academy, everyone was an equal. Noble titles meant nothing here. Roger was furious at being publicly dismissed. The next to be tested would be the main character. The arrogant boy believed this commoner would fail, unable to do anything with that pathetic sheath. Belle corrected him, saying he wouldn't use a sheath. Instead, he drew Caliburn. Roger was stunned that the boy had more than one divine weapon, but his surprise quickly turned to scorn. He saw that the blade had no magic. He believed after one hit, he would just be thrown back like the rest. The protagonist just smiled, hoped he would pay attention. He's about to unleash his attack. With a devastating barrage of strikes, he utterly obliterated the target. Nothing but pieces remained. His classmates stared, completely stunned by this display of sheer strength. The teacher was shocked. The golem was sliced without any magic. With this boy's skill, he doesn't even need such things. Roger can't believe such a talented commoner exists. Lime ran to his new friend to celebrate his amazing accomplishment. He just shrugged, saying it was simple. Even Lime could do it. The boy is amazed, since he can't master magic. Belle mused that her judgment of the boy was spot on. His divine weapon holds incredible potential. As long as he perseveres, he could be the strongest holy knight. Lime felt flustered by the encouragement. Right before a blonde girl appeared, she really wants to know how he is so talented. But her closeness annoyed the protagonist. Several other students also gathered, completely interested. Some couldn't even see his sword strikes. One claimed that his blade must be the best divine artifact among all the freshmen. Roger heard this, and the student quickly corrected himself out of pure fear, saying, Roger's weapon was obviously stronger. This only enraged him further. The day's classes had finally ended. The next session would be a practical test. They'll be hunting monsters in the forest, so it's best that all of them are ready for it. The students still buzzed with talk about the talented boy. Roger then called his bodyguard, who appeared in a flash. He had a worn-out and terribly grim expression. Roger brought a familiar for his own protection, and will use him for tomorrow's mission. The knight asked if he really planned to use it then. The boy said that was no problem. His knight replied that the young master's choices are always brave. Roger can't wait to see the terror on their faces. He's going to send that prideful commoner straight to hell. Outside the academy, they got ready for class. The monsters start at F rank, and some E rank monsters were also set loose. Their goal is to hunt all these creatures. Whoever defeats the most of them gets bonus points. Roger couldn't hide his mischievous smirk. Finally, the practice test began. It was time to show their true abilities. The girl challenged the protagonist, wanting to compete for first place. Little does she know, that spot is already claimed. He needs to show his real strength to them. Lime wanted to join him, since he lacked the confidence to go alone. He allowed him to come along, but made it clear he wouldn't slow down. Dashing toward the forest, he told him to keep up. It didn't take long to find several creatures, but they posed no real threat to our protagonist, who was slicing through monsters as if they were made of paper. His classmates were also fighting hard. He had already taken down 15 monsters. This is so easy. It doesn't even count as a warm-up. Lime is amazed by his classmates' incredible performance, but they have no time for chatter. A creature appeared behind the boy, but he ended up being saved by the protagonist. He must stay alert. The number of monsters is higher than expected. Must now fight against his own fear. His classmates are progressing just fine as the creatures are being swiftly defeated. He knows he must try much harder than this. Hidden nearby, Roger continues to watch. His adversaries, full of envy. He thinks these commoners are far too arrogant. That's why he'll make them pay. They are about to meet their end. Wielding a staff, he begins to summon something. The protagonist noticed the ominous magic circle forming. He was instantly intrigued, because from within it, a new creature emerged, a monstrosity that could dominate fire. It was a dangerous salamander. Its mouth was huge, and its teeth were incredibly sharp. All the students were terrified by its appearance. While they fled, the protagonist stood his ground. Lime couldn't believe such a creature had appeared. It was ready to attack everything in sight, leaving the boy completely terrified. For a second time, he was saved by the protagonist, who managed to block the incoming flames with his shield. He yelled for the boy to run with the others. A B-rank creature wasn't supposed to be in this forest, but that's irrelevant. This is actually going to be fun. He sent his light swords flying at the creature, easily cutting through its hard scales. Roger couldn't believe that commoner could use such unique abilities. He has to raise the difficulty, calling his knight again, who is ready to follow all of his orders. The creature was now surrounded by light swords. Lime thought it was incredible. His classmate is cornering. Such a powerful creature. The time for it to be defeated has arrived. The light swords are ready to deal a fatal blow, but a knight wouldn't let that stand, deflecting the boy's strike, then instantly realizing the truth. There was someone else in the forest. A figure emerged, remarking that such a unique power was quite impressive. Guessing he was the creature's master, he asked his price. The knight declared he would not be leaving without the boy's head. The salamander unleashed more fireballs as the knight lunged forward. Their attacks met in a fiery crash, kicking up a massive cloud of steam to clear the air. He blasted it with wind from his shield, but the knight was a step ahead, using a water prison to trap each of the blades. They were completely neutralized. That water prison had locked away their powers. This was definitely a level B paladin's work. Our hero was now cornered by two tough foes. Both the salamander and the knight pressed their assault. He had to fend them both off, blocking one with his shield while slashing the other. At his current power level, this was an impossible task. Lime didn't know what to do. At this rate, his friend was going to lose. Then he spotted Roger in the forest. His presence was way too suspicious. That was his family's summoning staff. He instantly confronted Roger, who was shocked to be found. He demanded to know if the familiar was his. He yelled to stop it now. His friend was in danger. Roger attacked without a second thought, telling the weak to stay on the ground where they belong. It was pathetic. being unable to help anyone. He started to recall when he was just a kid in training. His pathetic inability to use magic had earned him constant humiliation from that very boy. But this couldn't go on. He rose to his feet, remembering his friend's words. That was the first time anyone had ever encouraged him like that. He refused to let his friend die. He decided he would save him, but Roger sneered that the weak can't do a thing. Worms will always be worms. Lime told him to shut his mouth. He had no right to judge his worth. Roger started to look a little concerned. He warned that just because he could use magic now didn't mean he'd win. Lime calmly agreed with that. The fool's scythe started to glow too. He had to take out the trash, but Lime was radiating pure confidence. His spear instantly froze the flames solid, making them vanish entirely. A totally shocking outcome. The real trash here was the one with red hair. Roger grew even more furious, charging madly at his classmate, but Lime's spear was far stronger, easily blocking the attack. Their weapons locked in a screech of steel. Roger couldn't believe it, but Lime knew precisely what he was doing. To put it simply, he shattered the boy's divine weapon. He fell to his knees, unable to process what just happened. There was no way he'd lost to a lowly level F paladin. It was weird. Lime had always feared this pathetic guy, but now he felt absolutely nothing. He ordered him to hand over the summoning staff. Roger questioned if he knew who he was messing with. He was from a powerful county that could crush his family, but it seemed he still didn't grasp the situation. Lime calmly asked for his cooperation while freezing the boy's legs solid. Again, he demanded the staff, with his pride completely shattered. He agreed, begging to be spared and promising he wouldn't pull a stunt like this again. He was utterly defeated and humiliated. The staff was now in new hands. Lime warned Roger to stay far away from him and his friend, or things would get messy. He let his guard down for a second, and Roger saw his chance. The chain of his broken weapon was still in reach, and its other end began to glow. A sneak attack was coming. Roger was sure this would finish him, but Lime was totally aware of his plan, blocking the pathetic attempt. It was truly a shame he chose to act this way. The summoning staff hit the ground and was promptly shattered by the boy, leaving Roger speechless. He couldn't believe that precious item was destroyed. Slowly, the salamander started to fade away. A completely unexpected end to the night. He knew something was wrong with his master. Far off, he saw him completely defeated. Then he turned his gaze to the other commoner. But focusing was a luxury he didn't have. Time was running out. The real mastermind was finally revealed. It looked like he wanted our hero gone for good. Too bad for him, it had to go down like this. In a straight duel, that knight stood no chance. Now, all he could do was curse our boy, firing wildly, but every shot missed. His knight just kept getting worse, even though his B-rank power meant nothing now. Our hero smacked his head with the sword's hilt. The power difference was just too massive. Belle warned he'd snitch to the teacher. This called for his final desperate move. His trump card, he dropped to the ground and begged for his life. The sudden shift completely stunned our hero. The knight claimed he was only following orders. Defying a noble isn't exactly easy, you know. But this was all part of the knight's plan to lower his guard. He was seemingly forgiven for his actions. He gave thanks, all while plotting to betray him. That's when our hero revealed he'd been playing him all along. Lime rushed over to his friend, asking if he was all right. Our main character knew Lime's help had saved the day, so the main character was simply returning the favor. And with that handshake, their bond of friendship was sealed. Soon, other students began to show up, thanking him for his help. Defeating a B-rank knight was seriously impressive, but the story didn't end there. You see, that knight was one of Roger's cronies. The fire salamander incident was their doing, and because of his heroic deed, Lime was suddenly cheered by all his classmates. Turns out he was actually super strong. With humility, Lime accepted their praise, just as you'd expect from a future knight, right? But someone else was watching this scene from the shadows. A certain blonde girl seemed to like the show. She now understood his divine weapon's secret. Her mission was finally complete, and Roger would soon face justice. The girl was waiting for them down the hall. Apparently, she had something to say to our hero. He looked at her and recalled her name was Sila. He simply asked what she wanted. She knew its name was Avalon, his divine weapon. That revelation completely shocked him. But she also knew it was the holy weapon of past heroes. He had no clue how this girl knew about Avalon, judging by our hero's stunned expression. She was spot on. She was the first person to figure out his divine weapons. True nature. Her request was surprisingly simple. She clasped her hands, bowed deeply, and politely asked if she could see. The weapon? She'd always admired the legendary arms of heroes, so of course she wanted to see it. And since it was such a simple request, he showed her the sheath. Her eyes went wide with amazement. She never imagined it was actually real. Our main character had to know how she knew. She explained a legend passed down in her mother's family of a hero with a sheath of many weapons. Could it be one of his ancestors? Was from her family line, Lime was still totally lost. But he knew his friend's divine weapon had to be something incredible. The girl was overjoyed. A childhood dream now realized. To thank him, she invited the main character to a little get-together. Lime was totally on board with the idea. Our hero figured it was a good chance to see the city. He agreed on the condition that he could bring someone along. Later, the group is seen inside a cafe. Sarah absolutely adored the strawberry pie she was eating. Belle was thrilled to see her sister having such a good time. Sila never imagined. Our main character had such a gorgeous sister. For him, seeing her having this much fun was the best part. He was having a great time too. He never got to experience moments like this in his past life. Suddenly, the blonde girl called for everyone's attention. She announced she would play a song for them all. A song from a divine weapon. Now, this should be interesting. She began to play her lyre, and the sound was just awful. Her musical talent was basically non-existent. The girl knew she was a terrible musician. She was only doing it to make her friends laugh, and other people thought it was hilarious and begged her to continue. Then she pointed at Lime, demanding he sing along. The two of them put on a show for the whole cafe. It turned into a surprisingly fun performance. These two were his very first real friends in his entire life. Afterwards, they all agreed it had been a great time. Sila then offered to take Sarah clothes shopping. Our hero refused to leave his sister alone, but his friend insisted this was a girls-only event. Our main character was pretty bummed out. He just asked them to call if anything happened. Sila noted that he was clearly an amazing brother. Sarah then asked Sila if she had any siblings. Looking a bit sad, she said that she didn't have any. Just then, someone arrived looking for Sila, a man by the name of Avalon. And he is one of the student council members. What a strange greeting for half-siblings. She could have been more courteous, but she refuses to see him as a brother. He's here to force her to train. Her divine weapon, once perfected, could be a great asset to him. But she's already declared she's not interested in fighting in any wars. Rolling his sleeves, he calls her attitude problematic. It seems he'll have to drag her there by force. Blood begins to seep from his palm, then gushes with terrifying intensity. Sarah was horrified by the display as the boy manipulated the blood freely. A divine weapon fueled by blood. She called for Mary, her guard, but the kid had already handled that. One glance back told her her bodyguard was down for the count. This was bad. Her brother urged them to escape. He told Sarah to flee before it got ugly. She tried to draw her weapon to fight, but his assault was just too overwhelming. The boy knew if she screamed, it would get complicated. He had to end this, now. Sarah braced for impact, but was suddenly saved by her brother's companion. Sila crumpled to the ground, drained. A reckless move, and now she was powerless to resist. He used his power to ensnare her, lifting her into the air. Sarah was still, frozen in fear as the blonde girl went limp, all because of her own brother. Desperate, Sarah screamed for our hero's help. He was on the scene in a flash, slicing through the boy's tendrils, who clearly didn't see that coming. The blonde was safe. Sarah let out a huge sigh of relief. The main character demanded to know what this creep wanted with his friend. So much for their peaceful day. It was completely ruined. The strange kid asked if our hero was his sister's friend. Not that it mattered. He just shouldn't meddle in family affairs. Our boy told Lime to watch the girls. He had a face that needed rearranging. The kid was shocked by his nerve. He warned there was no point defending that girl, but slicing through the attacks was effortless. Much to the kid's surprise, helping a friend is just what you do. He launched an attack, but the boy simply protected himself with a shield, calling it a total waste of time. That blood shield was seriously impressive. It looked like his sword was completely useless against it. He couldn't afford to waste mana here. The kid was already moving to strike, but our hero dodged it cleanly. Annoyed, the boy declared that he would finish this quickly, unleashing a barrage of attacks. A pretty predictable move. Then the boy revealed the fire spitter. He had more than one divine weapon. This kid was no ordinary opponent. It was our hero's turn to fire, stopping every single attack coming his way. It seemed they were at a stalemate. Seeing his attacks intercepted only made the fight more complicated. But he was determined to capture his sister, forming a spear of pure blood. This will be the final blow. The protagonist confirmed that it absolutely would be. They clashed with everything they had. Up on a roof, someone remarked, "Now this is getting interesting." Looking up, they saw the newcomers. One landed with enough force to shatter the pavement below. He stood between them, a show of sheer power. He announced he would like to join the fun, too. Our hero recognized him from the student council. Meanwhile, the blue-haired kid demanded to know what Zeal was doing there. The girl told him he was being too rough with the kids, saying his behavior was embarrassing for a big weakling. Seeing his allies, the boy decided to back down. But Zeal wanted the fight to last a little longer. His entire body began to glow as he said, "Good, let's go all out." Armor materialized around his entire body. He wasn't just big, his presence was overwhelming. The girl told the meathead to just do his job. Summoning several chains, she moved to prevent him from doing anything reckless. They hadn't come here to continue a fight. Seeing her magical power, our hero knew she was also incredibly strong. Zol shattered the chains effortlessly. He stated that Evian had responsibilities with the student council, along with Albert. Because of this, he'd spend a month on a forest expedition. The task started immediately. He knew he had no other choice. As he left, he warned he'd retrieve his sister. In 1 month, the girl sneered a goodbye to the rookie weakling. It was a relief that they were all gone. The student council. Members are all complete monsters. He turned back, checking if his friends were okay. She said she was unhurt and apologized for involving him in her mess. But our hero said it was nothing. He just wanted to know why she and her brother were fighting. It turns out he wants to use her since he's the next heir. When he finally graduates, he's planning to expand his territory by attacking unexplored regions. Lime knows those lands are crawling with powerful creatures. Her brother thinks her divine weapon will be a key artifact for the war, but she refuses to be a part of it. Her goal is to become stronger and claim the heir position herself. It's the same kind of situation our main character is stuck in. The problem was, she felt utterly helpless. She was far from couldn't possibly defeat him, but Sarah insists that's not true. That girl had protected her. It seems this moment sparked a glimmer of hope. Sarah is deeply grateful for her help. Our protagonist also wishes to express his thanks and approaches the girl. Saving someone is what truly makes a person strong. In the past, he failed to do so. He tells her to be confident. If she lacks strength, she can simply train. Lime says he'll help her train as well. She's speechless at first, but so thankful for her new friends. The main character knows that last attack was nearly fatal. He'll be back in a month, so Belle must get stronger. To do that, he has to unlock his unique ability. He needs permission from his predecessors to learn new skills and so must return to that inner space. Closing his eyes, he focused his mind, channeling mana through his sheath. He was welcomed warmly by the predecessors. It had been some time since their last meeting. The boy had a request, but they already knew. They saw everything that happened in the last fight. That artifact was quite a problem. The enemy could freely shape it. It's an ability much like Avalon itself. They fell into a thoughtful silence. The comedian quipped that burning the blood would solve everything. And our hero thinks the exact same thing. That's why he needs his unique ability. The comedian agreed to it without any hesitation, only to reveal it was a joke. He really loves being the funny guy. Charlotte tells him to stop with the bad jokes, but it's a compulsion for him. Being a comedian is just too cool. That ability consumes immense magical power. Using it now would drain him instantly. But he has one condition for granting it. Before the rematch, he must perform 300 shots a day. Only then will he consider giving the boy the ability. The issue is, that number is impossible. His current limit is just 100 shots in a single day. But the comedian won't hear excuses and says to come back when it's done. After speaking, he snapped his fingers. The boy was sent right back to Baichamu, his body. He now knows the comedian is not just funny, but also a little wicked. He quickly realized that to use the skill, he'd need to triple his current mana pool. The problem is, that might not even be possible. The predecessors agree it's an impossible task. There's no way for him to increase his magical power by that much. But they're curious to see how he'll progress. If he can't get stronger, he has no chance of winning. The main character heads into the forest. There, he started firing shots, taking down creatures which wasn't too hard to do, but the sheer volume of work is exhausting. The only way to grow his mana is to hunt monsters. So, he'll hunt down every last one he can find. His friends are impressed by his incredible strength. It's a good thing. They decided to come along, too. They are all determined to get stronger. Our protagonist has some great friends, This helps? His own progress. After 100 shots, he's totally drained. Hunting increased his power slightly, but it's still not nearly enough. This rate of progress is far from what he needs. Just then, a terrifying roar echoes through the forest. That sound didn't come from a mere orc. He worried his friends might be in danger. Finally, our hero found the monster. It was lying defeated on the ground. Next to its body, his two friends celebrated their incredible achievement. The girl praised Belle for her excellent work. He was curious if his friends had taken down that beast, and that is precisely what happened. It was a sea-level monster. He thought his friends were at a much lower level, since they couldn't win with pure force. They devised a clever strategy. First, they completely surrounded the E-Guys, enemy with a wall of ice. Then, she attacked with her sound waves, which reflected off the ice barrier. Indeed, it was a truly brilliant plan. Those two have amazing synergy. This was the result of their combined power, and seeing this gave our hero an idea. Now he knows how he can fire off more shots. Just then, more monsters appeared. Several orcs, just like the one they defeated. A large group like this would be a huge problem, as they were all running on empty. But the protagonist had a flash of inspiration. He could still keep fighting. They would never. And just imagine, our hero pulled it all off. As he dashed away, the girl recalled he had a job to do. The seniors never expected the boy's lightning-fast return. The guild's comedian prayed he wasn't backing out, but the boy declared the task was already done, leaving them completely dumbfounded. There was no way he finished that in just one day. The comedian insisted he was the only joke teller here, but the boy was serious, so they challenged him to a fight to prove his new skills. He'd have to land all those shots in actual combat. They could even use their own weapons, unless they were scared. Our hero was buzzing with anticipation. He just needed the signal for the battle to start. They were completely prepared, and the comedian couldn't wait to see his progress. With a nod, the old master began the duel. Belle already had her pistol ready, but the comedian's first shot had already found its mark. He smirked, calling the boy too slow and in need of serious improvement. As expected, the weapon's original master was just that much faster. It seems the comedian wasn't kidding around this time, but our hero refused to lose this duel. A storm of bullets erupted between them, leaving the comedian genuinely impressed. Charlotte gasped. He's amazing. Now I understand why the old master decided to train him. He must be so proud of his student. But the shy one noted the real fight was still yet to begin. Charlotte hated his tone, but he reminded them they had to see if the boy was still capable of firing at all. Even Adam agreed 100 shots would be nothing. Our hero poured his heart into the fight, but it was still no challenge for the comedian, and the boy's stamina was fading fast. Adam had counted every single shot, 97 in total. Finding the battle a bit one-sided, the comedian decided to end things quickly, but our hero had an ace up his sleeve. He summoned his powerful shield. This way, he could protect himself a little longer. This forced the comedian to rethink his strategy. Then, the boy called upon the wind, channeling its power through his pistol. The comedian wondered what on earth he was planning. But with a slight smirk, our main character declared those old bullets useless. He'd empowered his shots with wind, surpassing the comedian's own strength, shocking everyone. This combination boosted his power, even though he had very little magic left. For the first time, the comedian was on the back foot. Not even our hero's mentor saw this coming. Charlotte cheered for him, hoping he could finally defeat the comedian. He wanted to know why he hadn't used this strategy from the very beginning. He reminded him that he fell for a trap earlier, and now it was payback time. But hiding his power might not change the outcome. Now our hero had to dodge every single shot. The fight became balanced once more as our protagonist managed to land the first hit on the comedian, but his own magic was running dangerously low, while the boy stuck to his plan. The tables had turned completely. His opponent was feeling the pressure. It was time to finish this. But the comedian is no easy foe. He vanished behind his flames, hiding his true position from our hero. In addition to the unpredictable shots, he was suddenly hit from behind, giving him a clue to the comedian's location. But he had already moved, landing another solid hit. All he had to do was keep hiding within the flames. With our hero completely cornered, he needed to blow that fire away with his wind. And he did just that, exposing the comedian who could no longer hide within the flames. Now he had a clear shot to hit his target, but he couldn't fire a single bullet. This situation was getting complicated. The others assumed his magic had finally run out, leaving him totally vulnerable. But the comedian had also run out of ammunition. The final impact echoed, forcing the comedian to his knees. He'd been pushed to his absolute limit, just like our hero, who had fired 301 shots. After that, he was utterly spent. He'd won by the thinnest of margins. Seeing our hero's determination, the comedian was incredibly pleased and offered his hand. At last, he gave his approval and unlocked the unique ability of his weapon. He politely helped our hero back to his feet, who was grateful for the recognition. He now had to master this new divine skill. Receiving another ability, he was confident that he could finally defeat that other jerk. The comedian truly wished for his protege to win the next battle, and our hero promised he would bring home the victory. A few days passed, and our protagonist continued training in the forest. It was crucial for him to get even stronger. Little by little, he perfected the mastery of his new skill. His friends approached, curious to see what had happened. His new unique ability was truly impressive. The girl asked if he could share some tips so they could learn too. All he could say was to keep defeating monsters. That was the only path he knew. But he did know a training method to boost the power they already had. One learned from his master. They needed to sit down and close their eyes and concentrate by making a certain symbol with their hands. It was the easiest way to circulate magical power through the body. By meditating for an hour a day, their magical power could grow much faster. In addition to refining it, it becomes easier to unleash their power in a real battle. They all decided. His friends decided to attempt this as well. This training method isn't a quick fix, but its long-term gains are huge. They began circulating mana through their bodies. Our protagonist noticed they were learning incredibly fast. Perhaps their growth rate was far above normal. He knew he couldn't afford to lag behind, so he resolved to continue his own training. It would also help master his unique ability. But 5 days flew by. His friends kept at it relentlessly. After 10 days, they started sparring to sharpen their skills even more. 20 days passed, and their training never ceased. A full month later, they met the jerk again. This time, he didn't come for his sister alone. It had been some time since they last met. Even the girl felt stronger. The jerk ordered his lackey to grab the girl, while he handled the annoyance. The servant acknowledged the command, but the girl wasn't going to make it easy for him. She immediately unleashed an attack with her divine weapon. The servant, however, was nimble enough to evade her strikes. Lime refused to let her fight alone, charging in. He would never let them take her without a serious fight. Elsewhere, it was time for our hero to settle the score. He had just one question. What did that creep want with his own sister? Her sacred weapon is special, passed down for generations. It controls people with sound. With it, she could turn anyone into a puppet for war. A truly despicable ambition. Indeed, he just wants to make conquest easier, using his sister as a simple tool. The protagonist had heard more than enough. That man was utterly unworthy of the title of brother. The jerk warned that mere anger wouldn't make his weapon work. Is that so? Our hero thought. We'll see about that. He then took a bizarre stance. The gun was aimed not at his enemy, but at himself. As he activated his power, flames erupted, directed at his own heart. In moments, his entire body was engulfed in fire. This was the incineration of the soul, a breathtaking technique. Even the jerk had to admit this could be trouble. The protagonist's power had surged immensely. Fiery wings sprouted from his back, enhancing his physical stats. He was now capable of closing the distance in an instant. The jerk fired a few blood bullets, but it was futile. His flames incinerated the projectiles, a sight the jerk had not expected. It was time to erase this scum. Nothing would be left of him. Rearing back for a devastating punch, the hero watched the jerk create a shield. It was a desperate move for his own protection. The barrier barely withstood the first explosive impact, but it shattered completely before the second. The protagonist's fist slammed into his face, sending him flying. The blood magic he wielded was now useless. He should just give up and crawl back home. But that wasn't all he had. The jerk got back to his feet. His eyes had transformed into something sinister, and his skin began to shift. It felt as if his very blood was boiling. This new form radiated a much more potent energy. The protagonist had no idea what he was seeing. This was the legendary blood of the dragon. The ability was transforming his entire body. He now looked more like a dragon than a man. He told our hero to feel honored and to regret it. His razor-sharp claws were ready for the kill. Belle watched his opponents advance carefully. With his heightened senses, he just barely dodged the attack. Even so, he suffered a shallow cut. His foe was surprised, certain he had landed a fatal blow. While he was distracted, the protagonist prepared a counter, launching a torrent of flames against him. The attack landed dead on. Now, to blow everything to kingdom come. The resulting explosion was massive. A huge cloud of smoke filled the air, but his opponent emerged completely unscathed. He called the attack pathetic. The scales covering his body were spotless. There wasn't a single trace of soot or burn marks anywhere. He charged toward the protagonist, ready to tear him apart. It was clear that mere fire wouldn't be enough now. So, he decided to crush him with raw power. The two titans were now on a collision course. Belle had to evade. He had to bait those claws again. It was his only chance to land a critical strike on his opponent's flank. The power of the blow barely registered. Those scales were absurdly resistant to any impact. The hero hesitated, lost in thought, and was blindsided by the dragon's tail, which sent him crashing to the earth. A powerful spell began forming to annihilate him. Belle knew he had to act now. He launched a fireball, trying to intercept the attack, but his enemy's power was overwhelming. A huge explosion tore through the air. The boy was visibly drained. Despite his resolve, he was at his absolute limit. The dragon could unleash those attacks repeatedly. This would make things much harder for him. Our hero would have to burn through his mana. Meanwhile, his friends on the ground were locked in. Their own battle. Their foe was likely B rank. They quickly planned a combined attack, but the silent enemy was simply waiting for them to act. Lime charged in first, forcing the knight onto the defensive. The boy had planted his spear as a feint, making his opponent pause. Finally realizing he was surrounded by towering walls of ice. That was the signal for his partner to strike, moving in closer. She sent powerful sound waves toward her opponent. This combo should have been enough to defeat a stronger monster. They thought the fight was over, but the knight just smirked. How utterly pointless. He struck his staff. On the ground, a dark, mysterious circle appeared, completely absorbing the sonic attack until absolutely nothing was left. A totally unexpected result for the kids. With his staff still planted, he prepared a counter that could annihilate them. The dark portal swelled, releasing the same sound waves. It had just absorbed. With that ability, their attacks were useless. The girl was still processing Deshasing. What had happened? The knight offered a fake apology, stating he had orders from his master. To take her, Lime wasn't about to let that happen. The knight warned the boy not to interfere. But he never listens, so he would have to be put down. The kid was still too inexperienced. The girl saw that her friend was also in trouble. She grew desperate, needing to help him, but her body wouldn't move. As the boy continued to take a beating, she wished for the strength to resist. She recalled the protagonist's words training would unleash her power. All she really had to do was calm down. That way, she could focus the magic within her body. Believing she could now fight, she was ready to save her friend. His skull was about to be crushed. But then, sound waves flew through the air. Lime reacted just in time. It wasn't his time to die yet, and the poor knight was quite confused by what was happening. This was the work of the girl's song. Lime could hear his friend perfectly. Her beautiful melody transformed into pure strength inside his body, and he was now able to push back, unbalancing his foe. The knight had no idea where this kid got so much strength. His divine weapons shone brightly, ready to freeze his target. Plates of ice shot from the ground, advancing on the knight, who knew he was in trouble. He wouldn't be able to absorb all of it, being completely choked by the ice. Our hero was near his limit. This battle was almost over. But he saw his friends had succeeded. Now only this jerk in front of him remained. What he would do next was a huge gamble, his hidden trump card. The dragon was intrigued that the boy was still hiding his power, but it made no difference. He would soon know true despair. The battle between them intensified once more, as the dragon also began powering up, about to release a devastating attack. The protagonist knew the final blow was coming, but he also had a plan. To make it work, he just had to survive. The dragon finally finished charging, its ability unleashing everything at the protagonist. That energy sphere was gigantic in unexpected size that could really complicate things. The boy needed to act fast to avoid defeat. The only thing he had was his own attack, launching flames to counter the blast. But the dragon's power continued to surge, a force that our hero couldn't withstand. He was overwhelmed by his opponent. It seemed the fight had finally concluded, but this wasn't the ending the dragon wanted. It desired more excitement. Only then did it realize the protagonist was now behind it. It had become distracted and left its own defense wide open. While charging all that power, the boy created a flame clone which was just destroyed, an ability the dragon never expected a human to master. Still confident, it believes the main character can't harm it with his weak attacks. It's time to show the results of his training, where he perfected his mastery over magic. The dragon sensed the boy's arm was now coated in mana. His attacks might have failed until now, But this punch would be very different. Looking back, the dragon saw that this was quite dangerous. Those blue flames were the boy's true trump card, striking his enemy's back with one glorious punch. Fist connected, unleashing agonizing pain, power that could shatter the dragon's scales. It was impossible that he was being defeated by a mere child. He managed to open his eyes. His body was completely encased in ice. He and his knight had been thoroughly defeated. The dragon expected to be furious with the children, but since he was beaten, the anger never came. The girl had a declaration for him. She would not allow him to ignite a war. She refused to be his pawn, and it was vital that he understood. Shockingly, it appeared he consented. He would obey the girl's command precisely. His words were so odd they sparked suspicion. Still, Lime dismissed her divine weapon, making the ice dissolve. The girl demanded he never appear before her again. Without a single word, he merely beckoned his knight to follow. Just like that, the two departed. That battle had been draining for them all. It was incredible that the main character defeated a member of the student council. He admitted it was a narrow victory. The girl then faced her friends, vowing to one day repay all their kindness, but they insisted that's not what friends are for. Hearing this, she had to clarify. They were best friends. Those words filled the protagonist with absolute joy. But now, they were on the radar of the other student council members. Therefore, he had to grow even stronger, especially concerning Albert, as he would not allow another tragedy to occur. He would become the strongest in this school and reveal his true power. Ultimately, he would crush his brother and rise as the family head. This time, he would be strong enough to protect them